light begins to fade now, and I feel like I'm losing time, but I don't know how I'm here. The sunlight is turned to gray. I feel like I'm losing love again. I don't know how I'm here. I could feel your heartbeat. I could feel it somewhere you're looking now. I could feel your heartbeat. I could feel it somewhere you're looking now. 'Cause it's you I'm loving, and it's you that I wanna breathe, and it's you I'm loving, and it's you that I wanna need.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome along to Simracersworld TV. You join me and Peter MacKay in the commentary box for round 2 of the Simracersworld GT Evo series, and we are at the beautiful and ever amazing Monza circuit for, well, if it carries on as it did last night in the GT Pro series, we are in for one amazing race. And well, Peter, this is the second time you're in the box with me for the GT Evo series, and Sebring was a success. What do you think's in store for us tonight?
Well, it's a pleasure to join you in the commentary box, Jack. I'm thoroughly looking forward to this, and certainly what we saw at Sebring was some really good pace. Running in the 1 minute 55, 1 minute 56 region in these cars at Sebring is seriously fast paced, and that's what our front runners were doing. And here at Monza, a completely different challenge, not quite as twisty as Sebring. And we're going to see the draft particularly be super important here at Monza. And while our drivers are out in qualifying, I'm seeing already a few of them working in packs and little groups trying to help each other with that draft. So I think we're going to be in for an exciting and intriguing race for sure.
Well, I certainly hope so, and I'm not sure whether you caught last night's race. It was crazy. It went down to the wire. There was lots of comeback drives, and obviously strategy. We've got to remember, everybody, that strategy will play a massive part in not just this in this race, the entire season. You've pretty much got to make 2 mandatory pit stops just to get to the end on fuel, and whether you take tyres or whether you make the mistake like a couple of people did yesterday, and just go that extra couple of mile an hour too quick into the pit lane, pick yourself up a penalty, and you've got all the work to do going into the closing stages of the race. So it's going to be one busy old night, because last night was, I've got to say, me and Hassa, we didn't really know where to look because there was so much going on. And well, speaking of not knowing where to look, I'm trying to decide on who to look at to start off with. Let's open it up with one of my favourite liveries we've got out on circuit. We'll go to Anton Dupin behind the wheel of his Flemish Simsports 4GT, and that car, it looks so balanced, and we get treated to another one just in the background as well. It looks so balanced and looks so good, and they were quite strong at Sebring as well. It just seems the BMW have got that edge over everybody else.
Yeah, you really do like that Flemish Simsport machine, don't you? And I have to say, yeah, the Ford GT, which debuted in 2016 at Le Mans. My apologies, it actually debuted at Daytona earlier on in the season, but Le Mans was the big race where they overcame Ferrari at the first time of asking. And the thing I love about this modern day GT is it emulates not only the design of the Ford GT that was built in the mid-2000s, but also, of course, the original built in the 1960s. And the Ford engineers were given a blank sheet of paper. They basically just said, I don't care what it looks like, make a car that's going to win Le Mans. And what they came up with was very, very close in design to the original Ford GT. But today, here at Monza, well, it's all about Munich. It's all about BMW, because we know that BMW M8 is a big old dragster, and a race 1 winner at Sebring, Rob Tyson, he's leading the way in his G-Drive BMW. 4 BMWs leading it out of the top 5 right now. Fantastic from the German marque so far.
It really is. And well, speaking of Sebring, let's have a look at the results that will get carried into round 2 here at Monza. So if we get them up, we can indeed. So like Peter said, Rob Tyson taking top honours at Sebring, collecting the full 100 points behind the wheel of his G-Drive Exemia BMW. We then go down to second place with Anton Dupin with 90 points, Billy Fletcher on 80, Marius Janke on 75, Hendrik de Graaf on 70, and then we go to John Tustin, Kimber Haight, Ronald Moons, Kevin Murray and Matteo Sufi, just to name the top 10. And Well, there really is there's a massive range of what points are out on offer if you have a look further down the order as well. So we can go from 23 points to 100 points just in the first round. That's a lot of variation from top to bottom of the order. And I think that will not it doesn't sound great knowing that there is that much variation, but that could also intrigue into some sort of close racing as well. Because if maybe one of the higher placed drivers can't attend a race, that's a lot of points on offer for somebody who can just make the most of it. And I think the key thing for Rob Tyson here is just to make sure he nails every single round and gets that points margin secure in case, you never know. You don't know what happens in the future. If he's got to miss a round, it really will hurt his championship hopes.
Yeah, I think it's a good system. I think it will reward the most complete driver because, as you say, you don't want a championship where you can drop a couple of rounds and still win it. To be honest, as we hit the checkered flag in qualifying, yeah, I think it's a great system actually, and it means that also it's going to reward the most complete driver who doesn't get involved in accidents. Because if you do get involved in an accident and you have a bad race, it's not just a small points drop, it's a massive points drop. So hopefully that'll help with the driving standards as well, which in Sebring in round one, I have to say, were superb. So, well, it's a BMW lockout of the front two rows here at Monza. It's going to be the BMW dragsters up front with Ferrari up there. Of course, the first Ferrari finished in 10th last time out at Sebring, and we've got one up in 5th.
We do indeed, and well, I was looking at that as well because the first Porsche is in 11th position. That's Bram van Uitven for Dynamics Racing. We're listening to Giuseppe Nazzo just run that Porsche to, well, its very limits, and it's got no fuel in it by the sounds of it. It's coughing and spluttering, but he's keeping his foot in. I'm not sure whether it's just going to be an in-lap or he's just seeing what the range is on an empty tank. But yeah, the highest placed Porsche is right the way down in P11, followed by Hendrik de Grave in P12. So not even a Porsche in the top 10 at the moment. So the BMW seems to be the way to go. They start to get more prominent in the midfield, the same as the Ferraris. And the Fords seem to be pretty much up and down the order. The highest placed one is Antoine Dupin for Flemish Sim Sports in P7, and the lowest placed one is Billy Fletcher, who sadly hasn't set a time. And I think he is in around about 28th position. So there's a massive spread of cars up and down the order, but it's just BMW on the top at the moment.
It is, yeah. The BMW in the real world, the M8, it's not had the most successful of competition life, really, in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship and in the World Endurance Championship. In fact, didn't win at all when it raced in the World Endurance Championship. However, in IMSA, it has won the last two Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. And of course, one thing you need at Daytona is horsepower on those big high bankings, and it is a really quick car in the bankings. And we saw at Daytona, the Porsche is really hassling around the twisty parts, and then the BMW just pull away along the straight. So need to see if that happens today. But I would keep an eye out for the Ferraris as well, because we saw them being used a lot at Le Mans in the iRacing Le Mans 24 Hours, and so they've got good top end as well. So don't discount the Ferraris, but yes, certainly a good gaggle of BMWs up front.
There really is, and well, speaking about the gaggle up front, we can now have a more confirmed look at that if we bring up the grid. There it is. So Rob Tyson starting on pole position with a 1 minute 43.726. That's very competitive. Even in the GT Pros, that would have been incredibly competitive. So a great job from Rob Tyson, followed by Camille Yagizoglu in second position. Then row 2, we've got Ben Thanes and Chris Moretta, Matthias Sufi and Kevin Murray make up row 3. Anton Dupin and Dieter Ertz on row 4, and Steve Cooley and Jesse Hendricks round out the top 10. Bram van Uitven lines up in 11th, followed by Hendrik de Grave. If we can get down one, maybe. There we go. It's me clicking the wrong thing. Sven Kalbert lines up in 13th, followed by Dominic Forster, Kimber Haight, Marius Janker, Ronald Moons, John McConville, Giuseppe Nazzo, Scotty Angelo, Jonathan Steggers, Roger Morton, Paul Clist, Dale Benison, and there we go. I've actually found the right button this time, and only a few more left to run through. Billy Fletcher lines up in 25th, followed by Sebastian Herber, Steve Norman 27th, Taylor Lane in 28th, Thiesberg, Stuart Musselwhite rounds out the grid by the looks of it. And I've just noticed we had something very similar yesterday. So the bottom 5, so the back 2 rows, and then Billy Fletcher haven't set a qualifying time. But we've got to remember that if you do that and you start at the back of the grid, you gain back 10 incident points. So if they gain 10 in Sebring, all of those are wiped just because they've started at the back of the grid.
I see, an interesting rule, that one. So we're got quite a short pace lap here as our field is bunched behind the the iRacing Porsche 911 safety car. It's on the pretty much the back straight here, so we'll just be pulling away, and it'll be quite a short pace lap. So for these cars, they do not have anti-lock brakes. So of course, turn one at Monza is one of the most notorious first corners. It might even be the most notorious first corner on the iRacing service for complete pandemonium. So watch out for that. So the drivers really need to try and get some heat into their brakes in particular before the pace car pulls off, because you're going to need all of that stopping power coming from right at the top of top gear right down to bottom gear as we pile in. We need to watch Taylor Lane there in the number 32 Porsche. We saw him carve through the field at Sebring. Not ideal qualifying for him today, but watch him in that 32 Porsche because he's got some speed.
It really does, and I think that the BMWs at Sebring really did suit those bumps, but the Porsches had something else on them as well. But we did see on a couple of occasions the Porsche rotating itself almost backwards into a lot of the corners if you hit a bump. And well, Ascari is quite a bumpy corner. If the second apex of the three, if you hit that wrong, we saw it yesterday that all four wheels can in fact leave the ground. So you've got to be very careful in those Porsches because they can be slightly unstable going through a couple of the corners. But we're going round Parabolica for the first time, albeit only on the warm-up lap. Rob Thiessen lining up at the front of the grid. Well, Kamir Yagizoglu's got something to say about that. He's not quite happy with where he is, trying to get in front of Rob Thiessen. Rob punches the throttle now, nice and early. Caught Kamir off beautifully, so Rob Thiessen crosses the line now, followed by Ben Thames, who's already picked up a position. So a G-Drive 1-2 at the moment. Kamir Yagizoglu finally gets away in P3, followed by Matthias Sufi, Chris Moretta, Kevin Murray, Anton Dupin and Dieter Ertz, and it's a very, very busy first corner. Let's have a look back, see how everybody else is getting on. We'll go back to the leader just to see whether he can work his way through there. He can. Ben Thames following him through, his G-Drive teammate. Let's have a look to see if there's been any incidents at the start. Everybody's nice and close, riding on board with Bram van Eitven. I think he just got away with a possible incident. He was very, very close to the tail end of the Ferrari. Scott Angelo's got through as well. I've got to say, that is probably one of the cleanest Monza turn ones I've ever seen.
I tell you what, that seeing a complete clean first sector at Monza is about as rare as the Ford GT road car itself. And oh my goodness me, commentators curse just as I say that. It's utter chaos at the second chicane here. Oh dearie me. But we've got one of the Fords there, two Fords actually. They're having problems. Anton Dupin, oh no, our second place finisher from Sebring. He's got back now in 26th position. That's a disaster for the Flemish Simsport driver.
It is indeed, but our provisional, or our pole sitter, Rob Thiessen, is now down in 5th position, so I'm not sure where he lost that time, but it's now Ben Thames, so one G-Drive car is swapped for another. Ben Thames is now leading the race, followed by Kamil Yagizoglu, still there in 2nd position. Then we go back to Chris Moretta, Matthias Sufi, and there is Rob Thiessen. Let's have a look back just to see whether we can find the original incident. I don't think there is one, if I'm honest. We've got an incident for Steve Cooley. This is what caused the big hit in the middle of the second chicane. There was lots of cars pirouetting into each other. I think there was a couple of BMWs involved, and Dynamics one in there somewhere. There's Anton Dupin in the Flemish Simsport Sport GT, and we're looking at Steve Cooley in the Ronin Simsport Academy at the very, very tail end of the grid now. And I think I saw another incident. We have got one indeed. So Kevin Murray, this was after the main incident. He gets spun into the wall and just about collects in. I don't think it was a major incident. He's got to wait for everybody to come streaming by now. So Kevin Murray losing out very early on, and we've still got the race going on. It's hard to not look at it with all the incidents that have happened. But Ben Thames still leading the way, Peter.
Yeah, I wonder if Rob Thiessen maybe got a slowdown penalty coming out of the chicane for some reason or another. It's the only thing I can think of, because he was already behind by the time they came into the second chicane. So that'd be a bizarre one. I'm sure, likely we'll be able to speak to Rob in post-race interviews if he has a good race. But yeah, that's a strange one actually, how that basically filtered out. But we'll find out later on in the race. Maybe someone in the comments can help us with that. Now, look at Rob Thiessen. He has done exactly what he needed to do here, because if you lose the draft of the leading pack, it is disastrous. And I'm sure he was aware of that at the wheel of that 205 number BMW, because he could see Townsend Yagazoglu getting away at the front, and he had to make sure that they did not, and had to basically put in some qualifying sectors to try and drag his way back up into the leading pack. Once he's in the leading pack, he'll be able to relax a little bit and settle into his rhythm, but he really had to push on there to try and catch up.
And speaking of qualifying sectors, he has put them in a purple sector 1 and a purple sector 5. I think there was a purple sector 4 in there, but that was taken off the top by somebody else. Can't quite find it on first glance, but Rob Tyson is doing an absolutely amazing job with the side-by-side for the lead by the looks of it. Ben Thane's on the outside, Kamil Yagizoglu on the inside. We know Kamil's good on the brakes, but I think he might almost get the move done before we even get anywhere near turn 1. Do we have a better camera angle? There we go, TV1. Ben Thane's just about keeps the position. Kamil Yagizoglu pulls into the draft and gets behind him once again. Chris Moretta there in third position. Well, I'm not sure how long that will last, because look how close Rob is to the tail end of, well, all of the BMWs at the moment. He's still in the draft. It's almost two duos here, both battling for P3 and P1 respectively. Rob Thiessen looking up the inside, going into the second chicane, late on the brakes. Can he get the move done? There we go. Rob Thiessen on the podium at the moment, because I'm knowing Chris Moretta, he won't give that position up easily. And we've had a slowdown by the looks of it for Kamil Yagizoglu, and Kamil has dropped right the way down to the back of the order. And speaking of Chris Moretta, he's gone back up into podium places, up into P3, and well, it's like nothing changed. G-Drive cars 1-2.
Yeah, it switched around, and Rob Tyson on that last lap, he was a second quicker than anyone in that leading group. So watch him to work towards his G-Drive teammate. And I tell you what, this is the critical thing about particularly Team Woes we see side by side. There's Mariusz Janka there in the number 88 machine, looking up the inside there. Dominic Forster in the Ferrari lets him go. That's wise at this stage of the race. We've got plenty of time. We've got an hour and a half of action. No point getting in too much fuss at this point. But for Rob Tyson, it's brilliant for him that he's got his G-Drive teammate up ahead. And to be honest, in sim racing, teammates are much more likely to work with one another than they are in real life. And normally, real life teammates are normally at war with one another, trying to beat one another. But in sim racing is a little bit more of a kind of camaraderie and team atmosphere. And here at Monza, no better time than to have a good teammate to work together and draft along with one another and basically try and tow each other away from the chasing pack.
Yeah, it really is. I couldn't agree more, because we know how important the tow is here at Monza, and we're just going to stick with Anton Dupin. I'll see whether we can get an onboard shot. That's the gyro. Not quite what I was looking for, but I think we'll have to deal with it. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Anton Dupin in the draft of Thies van der Berg. He has a look up the inside. That's a dive up the inside. Great move from Anton Dupin. It looks like he's made the move stick. We'll be able to tell. There we go. He goes for the apex. Anton Dupin has secured the position up into P20. A great job from Anton Dupin so far, even with all those positions lost very early on in the race. He's proceeding to carve his way back up through the order and see what he can make of it. But Rob Tyson still the standout driver for me at the moment, but let's have a look back just to see there's Chris Moretta in P3 defending as hard as he can for that final podium position. Kamil Yagizoglu looking to make amends for that earlier incident. He looks to the inside as they go under the bridge, down the hill and back up it on the run up to Ascari. Who's going to be the braver of the two? It looks like Chris Moretta pulled out of that move, let Kamil up the inside, and now Kamil has got to do all the hard work. He's got to punch the BMW M8 shaped hole in the air for Chris, and it's surely quite easy for Chris just to sit on the tail here. Not that he wants to, because he's jinking left and right trying to fill his mirrors.
Yeah, I think from where we're standing, Jack, I think that would be the play. That would be the play, because Kamil Yagizoglu gives him a bit of a shoulder barge there, saying, "I suggest you sit behind me, young man. I shall show you the way around this Monza circuit." But yes, I would agree, because that gives it gives Moretta some options. It gives him options to fuel save. It gives him options to tyre save. Because remember, we don't expect our drivers to change tyres during this hour and a half race. We're expecting them to actually use them all the way through. But Moretta, look at that. That's just all draft there. Didn't necessarily get a better exit than Yagizoglu, but was able to draft them down the straight. So, interesting play there from Moretta. He obviously thinks that he's quicker than Yagizoglu, but the early pace would suggest otherwise. Anyway, you do have that option as well. If you've got a slightly quicker driver in front of you, to sit behind them and sort of consolidate. And when you sit behind another driver, you use so much less fuel.
You really do, and that is going to be the turning point. We didn't mention that the strategy will be a big play here in the GT Evo and the GT Pro Series, and we've seen it happen before. If you can gain an extra lap out of the car and you're confident you can do it on the tyres without them degrading massively, you can just stay out and keep on turning all the quick and consistent laps, and if you can make that work, it will add up slowly. But I'm just thinking back to yesterday's race. Once again, G-Driver at the top, but somebody else expected to see slightly higher up is Mariusz Janka. He is doing a good job at the moment because he's gained 2 positions where he started 16th up into 14th at the moment for Manatee Racing. And well, in the GT Pro League, or in the GT Pro Series, Manatee have just converted all the way over from the Ford to the BMW, and they're stuck with that. You're only allowed one change throughout the entire season. And Mariusz Janka doing everything he can behind the wheel of that BMW to squeeze his way past John McConville, the Simracersworld driver. He's back in the draft. That looked like a major run from Sven Kalbert, but I think it was just a bit of... No, it definitely wasn't an optical illusion. There is Sven Kalbert now looking at the inside into parabolic here. He might be able to get 2 for the price of 1 here. He gets up the inside of Mariusz, and the next target for him will be John McConville in that Simracersworld car. It does say privateer. I will get that fixed. I am sorry, Ian. But John McConville now has got all the work to do. He's defended from Mariusz Janka, and Mariusz has swapped for P14 with Sven Kalbert, and he's now got another driver to try and defend from. Almost 3 wide, I think. Well, they have a look, they give it a go. And John McConville parks the car in the middle of the circuit just to make sure nobody can get by. I say that, but it looks like Sven Kalbert might just squeeze up the inside. BMW gets the superior traction, and I actually think that Mariusz Janka has got the superior traction as well. No, he gets his nose cut across, and well, we're only 10 minutes into the race and everybody's still battling nose to tail, and I've got a feeling this ain't going to go away.
No, absolutely not. And also, speaking of the Simracersworld team, the Simracersworld Ferrari of Sufi having a problem running on. Very easy to do, outbraking himself at the opening chicane into turn 1. Had to go through and weave through the bollards, and he's now back to 11th place, where he was running around the top 5 prior to that little mistake. But no harm done, no damage, so that's absolutely fine. Now, speaking of that change, Jack, I want to talk about the 12th place man of Billy Fletcher. Of course, we saw him finish 3rd at Sebring at the wheel of a Porsche, but now, look at that, he's in a Ford GT. So does that mean then that he has to then stick with that Ford GT, or can he switch back between that and the Porsche?
From what I'm aware, that is the only sort of free change you can get, and it looks like he's slightly distracted at the moment because he just clipped the grass going down, well, a straight. But yeah, I think that is the only change you're allowed without incurring quite a sizable penalty. So I think Billy Fletcher will have to stick with that Ford just so it doesn't ruin any championship hopes. And like you say, with that P2 finish at, or P3 finish, pardon me, at Sebring. Did I get it right? Is it P2 or P3? I really can't remember. It was
P3 he
right,
finished,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, he will have to stick with that for the rest of the season if he wants any hope of holding that good position in the championship. We're looking at Dominic Forster looking up the inside of Ronald Moons, and Ronald placed the car exactly where he needed to, just so Dominic couldn't get by. And we've got battles up and down the order. Let's go back to this battle. We were looking at it a little earlier on. This is between John McConville, Sven Kalbert and Mariusz Janka for Manatee. And the Dynamics racing car is all over the tail of the Simracersworld driver of John McConville and number 25 BMW. Let's see whether we can get a better camera angle of it. If we can find one here. There we go. John McConville still just about in front, weaving his way through the second chicane. And this trio, I'm not sure whether they're following each other or just battling, because it looks very much the same here at Monza, but either one will slow you down or the other will speed you up.
Yeah, they certainly will. And just a note on, we're talked a lot about the different cars and their different attributes. You know, of course, the BMW M8, it's a huge car. As you can see, it completely engulfs the Ferrari in front of it there. But it's a fast car. It's a proper dragster down the straight, and actually really nice and stable through the bends. And I think that's why it's a good complete package as well. Big shoulder charge there. Oh, goodness me. That's... Now that is Kalbert getting shoulder charged there by Janka. Yeah, he will not be happy about that at the wheel of that 73 Ferrari. But yeah, we see, you know, that each car has its own characteristics. No room left there for Kalbert, and he got hung out to dry. But of course, this season will actually straddle across into the next iRacing season. So each iRacing season is 12 weeks long, and then there's a big update. And we get little updates throughout the season, but there's a big update at the end of the season, and it could be that one car is preferable now, but when we reach the later part of our season and go into the new iRacing season, that could be that all of a sudden the BMW goes from the fastest car to the slowest car.
That very much could be the case. We know that BMW was very quick as soon as it came out, and then the Ford not so long back got the balance of performance, and it was definitely the preferred car. It was probably the quicker car of them all as well, but I'm not sure where it stands at the moment. It seems like the BMW has worked its way back up to the top, and the Ferrari's been pretty much overshadowed by everything else. I've got to say, I don't really see it that often in the public sessions, but it's nice to see it out today. The highest place Ferrari is currently P2 in the bronze class, Jesse Hendricks, and you might hear me, or might hear me and Peter referring to this bronze and silver class. And the GT Pro has got the platinum and gold class drivers, and the GT Evo series, the one you're watching this evening, has got the silver and bronze categories. These can be defined on the timing tower. You can see we're currently looking at Jesse Hendricks, and he has got the bronze coloured stripe just in between the position and his name. And then if we go up to Rob Tyson, you can see the silver slash between the number and his name, and he's now leading. I missed that. There's a 1G drive car was swapped for the other. I clearly didn't see it in time, but Rob Thiessen, he's dropped down to 7th and worked his way right the way back up to P1.
Yeah, and now it's his turn to do the hard work to pull his teammate along, and you see that there. His teammate Thanes was actually went about a 10th quicker there. Yeah, nice and safe down the start finish straight. And of course here at Monza we've seen so many big drafting battles over the years. I actually remember the first time I remember watching the first time Jackie Stewart won his first ever Formula 1 Grand Prix for BRM, and he won it just on the line in a big 4-5 car drafting battle, and we've seen that all the way through today's even just out in these opening 15 minutes or so. There's been so many great drafting battles. Now, what did we say about Taylor Lane? He's just quietly making his way through the field in 15th position now, so he's making it through. Also, Billy Fletcher, he started right at the back of the pack, but up to 12th, but sort of, he's now up behind, who's that? He's up behind Sophie in the Simracersworld machine. And that is, yes, that is the same Simracersworld that we are broadcasting right now, and of course, series organizer. And as we said last time on the broadcast in the Sebring, what do Ian Roots and Roger Penske have in common, Jack?
Oh, I remember you saying it, but go on, enlighten me.
So, of course, Roger Penske, well, one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name in motorsport, the owner and the most successful IndyCar team owner in history, more Indy 500 wins than any other team owner, but also now owns the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IndyCar series as well. So, of course, our boss, the gaffer Ian Roots, he owns Simracersworld, the channel, Simracersworld, the series, and of course, the Simracersworld Sim Team, which we can see on screen with that Ferrari. So, basically, he's the Roger Penske of British sim racing.
I couldn't agree with you more, if I'm honest. I didn't quite think of it that way, but yeah, it's whatever the Sim Racers World thing is, it's doing quite well. But we've still got a race going on, ladies and gentlemen. Billy Fletcher up 14 positions into P11. Stuart Musselwhite currently in front of Taylor Lane. We saw those two swap positions on the lap prior, so Stuart Musselwhite up into position 14. There is another one of the SRW cars. There's a side-by-side action going on in the background. That was Anton Dupont braking sideways, trying to get up the inside of Sven Calbert for Dynamics Racing. In front of this little battle is Taylor Lane, gained 13 positions up into P15. And somebody who won't be very happy with his performance today is this one here, Kevin Morey. We saw him involved in, well, a couple of incidents coming out of the second chicane. He was backwards for a little while on the gravel and then got punted into the wall. And he has lost 20 positions, started 6th, and he's right the way down in 26th at the moment. So the Galacticus Motorsport BMW, not exactly where we expected it, but he's continuing on. His next target is 21 seconds up the road. That's Giuseppe Nazzo in the Ronin Simsport Academy. And oh, that noise, you can't get a better sounding car, can you, Peter?
It's a musical instrument, that 911 RSR, I have to say. One of the very few naturally aspirated race cars around. A 4-litre flat six, my apologies. 4-litre flat six, naturally aspirated, about 500 horsepower, and it just sings. Sadly, that car has actually been retired by the Porsche factory team now, and back at Silverstone in September last year, they brought out a new twin turbo edition, which they'll take to Le Mans this year, and I've already campaigned it at Daytona as well, a couple of occasions already. And I can tell you from first-hand experience, having heard it trackside, it is very much a pale imitation of the normally aspirated machine, and it just shrieks its way down the straight. And actually, that was the 911 RSR in question that we have here on iRacing is Billy Fletcher's not in the Porsche anymore. That's behind really Billy Fletcher, Ronald Mons. Yeah, you look at the back of that 911 RSR, we'll get a good look at it now. You see the enormous rear diffuser on the back of it there. That's the kind of square carbon fibre thing on the bottom of the car, and it gives incredible rear downforce. And actually, this is the first ever 911 RSR to have the engine mounted in the middle rather than at the rear, which is very much more typical as the Ferrari of Dominic Forster. Nipped back on Ronald Moons. But yes, it's mid-engine, and that was because the engine was moved forward to allow room for that diffuser for that particular car, and that came in 2017, and that car has had some serious success in its time.
It really has, and I've got to say, the iRacing service, I absolutely love that car. You find the setup that works for you, and it is just a beautiful car to drive. And I'm pretty sure Ronald Means would agree with me at the moment. Currently, the third highest placed Porsche. We've got a battle going up a little further, on a little further up, and that's the two Porsches. Actually, that's not a battle anymore. That's Hendrik de Graaf backwards down the back straight, coming out of Ascari, and I've got a feeling that car won't be driving quite as straight as he would like it to. It looks rather damaged as well. Let's have a look back to see what happened at that out the exit of Ascari. Might be able to find it here if we go here. Oh, it looks like he lost it coming out of Ascari. We'll try and have a look a little further back. Loses it there and then gets collected. That's very unlucky from Ronald. Was it Ronald Moons that collected him? No, it was Brampton Eichsford who continues on with very little damage. That's quite a weird incident, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a shame if you're a Porsche fan, because really Van Uyten and de Graaf were holding up the honour of Porsche. The Weissach honour was being held up by them. They were the only two Porsches anywhere near the front of the field, but unfortunately they've now gone further back. I'm surprised de Graaf didn't come into pit lane, and look at the back of that car. It's looking very second-hand indeed. Now, of course, our drivers have the option. They have one iRacing fast repair that they can use throughout each race, and what that means is that they can effectively, if they've got damage, they can bring the car into pit lane, either under its own power or via, if you need to, via an electronic tow. Which basically teleports the car back to pit lane and gives you about a minute and a half penalty or so. And basically you get a complete instant repair and the car goes back to more or less 100%. And you'll see a number of drivers using that throughout the field. So if you see a car miraculously going from being very damaged to perfect again, that's that driver using the fast repair. And Billy Fletcher, the front of that Ford GT is looking a little bit second-hand as well. So obviously he's had a little bit of contact as he's been barging his way to the front of the field as he heads past Bechet into 7th place. I tell you what, this is a really impressive move up the field from Billy Fletcher in the 388 Ford.
It really is, and he is now the highest placed Ford. He's swapped one for the other, and Billy Fletcher, like you say, up into 7th position, gained 18 positions from where he started. What we can do for you, ladies and gentlemen, is bring up the gains overall. There it is, 18 positions from where he started. It might quickly become 17 now, because look at Verhey, going into the first chicane. Billy Fletcher on the inside. It looks like he will maintain his position. He will indeed. But that's very close racing between the pair of them. 2-4 to look at that, using all the track and very, very nearly dipping a wheel into the gravel. I think he might have just skimmed it. So Billy Fletcher pushing the car to the absolute limits, doing a great job. But back up at the front, look at the gap that Rob Thiessen has got over his teammates. So Ben Thanes is all the way back there.
Oh yeah, he's well and truly broken the draft. So I'll tell you what, if there's obviously not a massive amount of team orders there, he just said, sorry, if you can't keep up with me, I'm going to have to check out here. I've got a championship to win. And Rob Thiessen, we saw him do incredibly well as Sebring going to a dominant victory, a flawless victory in his BMW M8 back there. And, well, he's more of the same here at Monza. And I tell you what, if he can carry this on to Watkins Glen in 2 weeks' time, he's going to be putting a lot of distance between him and his championship rivals.
He really will be, and that's exactly what you need to do. We've seen it happen before, and Rob Teaser going into this round on 100 points and looking to pick up another 100. And if he can grab that on the way into Watkins Glen, that really will give him that upper hand, not just into Watkins Glen, but into the rest of the season as well. Let's have a look back at a battle going on in the mid-pack. That's Matthias Sufi following Ronald Moons, but the pack is led by Dominic Forster at the moment in that yellow and black Ferrari. It's got a slight spec map on the side of it as well, by the looks of it. I saw a bit of shining text on the side. I've been trying to figure out what it is, but I can't quite see it. And it says he's a privateer, so I'm not 100% sure. I think he might be a Vulcan sim racing driver. I will have to have a look. But have you got any ideas?
I have to say, it does say Vulcan on the side of it, so that would certainly indicate that, I would imagine. But we could just call it the Bumblebee car, because it's bright yellow and black. It looks fantastic, actually, on that. To be honest, there's no bad-looking Ferrari, is there? Just a mention on Billy Fletcher, he's gone into pit lane. So remember that these cars, they're running at 60% fuel cells. So normally, one of these GTE cars will run on a full fuel tank to about an hour or so. But to basically force the strategy, the rules in this particular series limit the fuel cell to 60%. So that means that we can expect about 40-minute maximum for a stint. But Billy Fletcher having to come into pit lane after just 25. So, that is going to be tight for him to... Yeah, well, he's going to have to... Yeah, he should be okay, actually, and then he'll have one more stop after this, yes. So he should be okay, but one of our first takers for pit lane.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how strategy will play out for everybody, because you can pit maybe a couple of laps earlier than everybody else, but that's all you can really afford, because you want to make sure the car is as light as possible as it crosses the line. There's no need to carry any extra fuel load, and you make a good point with the 60% load cell, because if you... or with the 50% fuel cell, pardon me, not a load cell, that's a type of brake. The fuel cell, because if it was any higher, you might just be able to squeeze a one-stop out of it. And normally the 100% fuel load, you can do a full hour. So when you think about it, it really does throw a spanner in the works for everybody, because it produces almost 3 sprint races. The one at the start, the one after the first pit stops, and the one after the second pit stops, which I think is just great to see, because you might end up battling different people over different laps. This is now Ronald Moons just about promoting himself up into 8th position. Does he keep it? He does indeed, around the outside of Dominic Forster. So Dominic demoted down into 9th position, and Ronald Moons up into 8th. And 2 people that we haven't really seen much of is this one here, both the Dynamics Racing cars. So we've got Jesse Hendricks in the Dynamics Racing Ferrari and Bram van Uitven in the Dynamics Racing Porsche, currently at the moment leading the bronze class by far and away, because the closest driver to them is 4 positions back, and I think that is around 11 seconds. Matthias Sufi, oh no, it's not as far as I thought. Correction, let's make that 5 seconds. 8 seconds from Jesse Hendricks is Matthias Sufi. So at the moment the bronze field is spread out to quite the margin, and we've still got 4 BMWs at the top end of the silver class.
Yeah, we certainly have, and quite a few more Ferraris up the sharp end, which is what we expected. The Ferrari is a bit of a dragster as well, and the thing that I find amazing about the Ferrari GTE car is just how much power they have to take away from it from the street car. So you would imagine that the racing machine would have far more power than the street version. Well, even in standard trim, let's just say the entry-level cooking spec, if there's such a thing, Ferrari 488 GTB, has 660 horsepower. It's crazy to think that's the entry level. But the race car only has 490, and that is simply down to the balance of performance regulations. So in order for a twin-turbo mid-engine Ferrari to race side-by-side with a front-engined, basically BMW GT car and a 911 Porsche and a homologation special Ford, basically both in the real world and here in the virtual world, the organisers have to effectively balance the performance of them all together to ensure we have that variety in sports car racing. We see it a lot in GT3 racing as well, and what they can do is they can add or take away weight to adjust the pace. If you add weight, it slow the car down, or you can change the air restrictor size. If you increase the size of the air restrictor, you get more power and more speed, or sometimes if it's a turbocharged car, they'll affect the turbo boost as well. So That is why you'll often hear drivers talking about BOP, or BOP as it's sometimes referred to, and it's an ongoing discussion. And clearly right now, the BOP is in favour of BMW. However, you would say, Jack, that this is a circuit that certainly suits that car.
See, personally, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I had to think that the Ford or the Ferrari is quite quick around here, because it seems much more streamlined and it's got nice, smooth, flowing body panels. Whereas if we look at one of the BMWs we've got out on circuit, it really is quite a big car, isn't it? It's almost got a flat front and it's very, very wide, so it punches a very big hole in the air, but it's evidently got the power to push through, to get through it all. And whether that just be something BMW took into account, knowing that full well it's going to be a big old car and one of the hardest cars to pass, that might have even crossed their mind as well. If you build a big car, it's going to be very hard to overtake, and it seems that way for the guys at the top, because Chris Moretta is still within a couple of seconds of Kamil Yagisoglu. He's dropped back over the past couple of laps, though, by quite a bit. We did look at them only 2 laps ago going through Parabolica, and you saw how close they were there. But Kamil Yagisoglu now still in 3rd position, but we saw them battling earlier on, and it was a very, very tricky task for anybody to overtake, because it's just such a big car.
Yeah, it is. And for example, if you take it to, well, we saw it last season at Lime Rock Park, which is almost like a Skeletric track compared to somewhere like Le Mans or Monza. Very, very small track, less than a minute round. And the BMW really struggled there. So you can see it's a bigger car. The weight, believe it or not, the weight is actually not the problem. The weight, it's on the balance of performance, it's actually ever so slightly lighter and given more power. But you make a very good point about the aerodynamics, Jack. I mean, that is based upon, that is effectively a street car design with aerodynamics added to it, whereas the Ford was built purely with racing in mind, and then they basically stuck number plates on it. That's the only difference, really. But the thing is, the interesting part about the BMW M8 when it was debuted and the Ford GT is that on both of those cars, the race car actually broke cover and was competed with before the street car actually came out, whereas the other cars, the street cars, have come out first and then been adapted to racers.
That's quite interesting as well, because I've always thought that you've got to sell a certain amount of cars within production, and then you can turn it into a race car and get it to homologation spec. Whether that be something that they've done or not, or whether there's different rules around the world, but it's quite interesting to see that no matter what approach you can get, you can very much end up with a very, very competitive car. And at the moment, we've got a lot of cars in the pits. We've got Taylor Lane coming in now, followed by Matthias Sufi, Kimber Haight, Bram van Uitven, Jesse Hendricks, Chris Moretta in from P3, and Kamil Yagisoglu in from P2. So lots of chopping and changing. Stuart Musselwhite just across the pit lane now, as well as Sven Kalber crossing the start-finish line. So chopping and changing up and down the order, and the only way we're ever going to tell whether anybody's gained or lost positions is once all is said and done. And we've finished both the pit stops, but we've still got Rob Thiessen leading the way to the tune of about 3.9 seconds, almost 4 seconds to his G-Drive teammate of Ben Thanes. There's the gap between the two, and it's a big old gap to Ronald Moons now, 25 seconds. And bearing in mind, Ronald Moons, Ben Thanes and Rob Thiessen haven't pitted yet, so these three are all racing on the same lap, and no strategy has come to a play yet. And well, Ronald Moons 25 seconds behind Ben Thanes. It just shows how quick these G-Drive BMWs are.
They certainly are, and I have to say, it must be the worst feeling ever for a racing driver when you're in the same team and your teammates just pulling away from you, and there's nothing you can do about it. As you see, Rob Thiessen, our leader, is in pit lane, brings it down, and I tell you what, he doesn't take any risk there. Doesn't need to. Slows down to the pit lane speed limit, engages the pit lane speed limiter, which is effectively like a really slow version of cruise control. If you've got it engaged, it will not go any faster. You can have your foot welded to the floor and it will not go any faster unless you take the speed limiter off. So let's see if Ronald Moons, if he goes for an overcut here, or if he comes into pit lane. He does. So we've got all of the leaders on exactly the same strategy at the moment. But interesting to see if Stuart Musselwhite, if he's got another idea. You can hear him, he's maybe just a little bit softer on the throttle here. Is he going to come in? Yes. So no real big surprises on the strategy just yet. The only real big outlier was Billy Fletcher in the Ford, who pitted about 10 minutes ago or so. And he's now sitting in 9th position. So he's we need to watch him, because he's had a really good climb up the field so far.
He has indeed. There are the G-Drive cars leaving the pit lane now. There's Kamil Yagizoglu, so much closer to Ben Thanes than he was going into the pit. So Kamil Yagizoglu was definitely gained. Chris Moretta, how close is he? He's lost loads of time, but look who's behind him. It's Billy Fletcher in the 4GT. So Billy Fletcher has done an absolutely storming job. Started P25 up into 5th position at the moment, and we've got to bear in mind Billy Fletcher is a bronze driver. He's now taken the lead of the bronze class. Jesse Hendricks is behind him in 2nd in the bronze class, and there is Bram van Uytsven under pressure from Kimber Haight, but that is a battle for position overall, but not a position in class. Bram van Uytsven still in 3rd position in class, depending on what happens between those two. But look how close Kamil Yagizoglu is to Ben Thanes now. That gap really has come down.
It definitely has, yeah, and it's amazing to see Billy Fletcher now up with the leaders after starting from the back of the pack. Now, for him, he probably just needs to find a driver that he's running at has a similar pace with, perhaps Chris Moretta or Yagizoglu, and then try to sit behind them and save a bit of fuel, because he will be a little bit disadvantaged having stopped earlier. He might want to just take it pretty easy and sort of use this as a bit of a consolidating stint and then go for it all hands down in the 3rd stint. So effectively, as you rightly pointed out, Jack, we're going to see this race basically split into 3 sprints, a bit like how at the Le Mans 24 Hours we basically see about 22 sprints, all kind of added together. Speaking of Le Mans, there is one car which we're used to see at Le Mans, which we don't have on iRacing yet, but I hear it might be on the way. The Aston Martin Vantage GTE. According to Aston Martin factory driver and prominent sim racer Nicky Thiem, he was basically saying that it's in the works and it's on the way at some point.
I want one. I don't want to wait until that gets there. Would that be the V8 or the V12 variant? Because I know the V12's getting on now, and the V8
it'll be the new one, the V8 with the Mercedes engine in it.
But that I don't know why, but I want to pair the BMW M8 and the Vantage V8 together, because I've got a feeling they're very similar body types, very big cars, and they're both in GTE, so I can imagine they will produce some very, very close racing. And let's hope that there is a Simracersworld GT Pro and GT Evo Series 2 after this season. Or in theory, it'll be a GT Pro Season 8 and a GT Evo Season 2. And if that is with the addition of an Aston Martin, it will be closer than ever. It just adds another car into the mix, and that can only make it closer. Still looking at Billy Fletcher in P5 at the moment for Luxim 24 Esports. The number 388 doing an absolutely amazing job. The closest cars on circuit we've got at the moment are these two here, or this trio, pardon me. Ronald Moons following Dominic Forster, and Matthias Sufi has now got in front of Dominic. We looked at this battle a couple of laps ago, and the Vulcan Sim Racing car is now dropped back into the middle of them. He was leading the way, but look at that run Ronald Moons has got coming out of Lesmo 2, going down the straight. I'm not sure whether he's quite got enough draft to get there before Ascari in the gap. It seems like it's opening up again. That was very weird. I don't know whether that's me just seeing things, but it looked like Dominic Forster almost started to pull away on the straights. Could that be just a bit of setup play, or Dominic knows something that we don't?
I think it's that slippery Ferrari that's got some really good top end, and the Porsche has lots of good attributes, but top end is not one of them as things currently stand here on the iRacing service. But Ronald Moons, round the outside at the Parabolica. Wow, what a move. That was amazing, and he just set it up, got a good exit out of Ascari, using that Porsche drive grip, using that traction that Porsches are so famous for, getting a good exit, using the draft of Dominic Forster, and then goes round the outside at the Parabolica. That is one that he will be replaying in his mind many times over the next few days. That's one of those moves where you go, you pat yourself on the back going, that was pretty good actually, well done.
That was an amazing move from Ronald Moons. I'm not quite sure how he found the grip on the outside and then cut back to the inside and proceeded onto the very, very long start-finish straight. We'll go back live with them because we are still on a replay. There we go. Ronald Moons has made the move stick and the gap has opened up, but that little battle they had into Parabolica means that Matthias Sufi has slowly started to disappear into the distance and to make good his escape. He's noticed in the rearview mirrors that they were battling, and he's just concentrated, made sure he's hit all his apexes, hit all his braking points, and built it up. But I don't think that will do much for Ronald Moons, because Ronald, we've seen the potential of that Porsche and the potential of him behind the wheel of it, and he definitely knows what he can do. But look who's coming in the background. That's Anton Dupin. He's now all the way up into 12th position. He started in 7th position, I believe, and he's worked his way back up through the order, and he's on a charge now, back on the way to get back into the top 10. First target pin will be Dominic Forster. He's lost out on the lap prior to Ronald Moons with that amazing move, but I'm not sure what Dominic will be able to do in the way of defending from Anton Dupin, because he really is on fire behind the wheel of that Ford GT.
Yeah, it's a really good recovery drive from Anton and the number 14 machine. Of course, our second place finisher 2 weeks ago in the opening round at Sebring. So it's a long championship. We're going to Watkins Glen in 2 weeks' time, then Mosport, Imola, Silverstone, Suzuka, Road Atlanta, Daytona, and finally the season finale at Spa-Francorchamps. So long season, but not one where you can afford, as we say, with this point structure, with so many for a win and nothing for coming at the bottom of the pack. Well, you just can't afford to be there if you want to mount a championship challenge. And Anton is doing everything right here to recover from that opening incident. Now, I have to say, for Ronald Moons, he will, I tell you what, he won't need much motivation to try and make his way past Sufi. But one thing that he really will be wanting to desperately get by is, at the moment, if you look at the back of that Ferrari of Sufi, it's got a Chaz Draycott media logo on the back, and I have to say, he won't want to spend very long looking at that. I'm sure he'll be wanting to get past so that he can, he can relax a bit.
I want to have a look at this because I didn't notice this, and I thought the livery had been updated since the... Oh, there it is. There's the Chaz Draycott media logo. So Chaz, our fellow commentator, has managed to waggle his logo onto the tail end of that Simracersworld Ferrari. And you'd have thought that would just make it go quicker, but Matthias Sufi's struggling away behind the wheel of that Ferrari. Ronald Moon's very, very close, and well, he's done it once, and I'm guessing that has given him the confidence to do it again. There's now a lead pair at the moment, and then a trailing pair. Dominic Forster under pressure from Anton Dupin. We saw it on the lap prior, and look how much time he's gained now. Only 4/10 between the pairing. Matthias Sufi really under pressure from Ronald Moons now. I'm guessing Ronald will be sizing up a move at the moment and maybe think about one going into turn 1 if he can get enough draft assistance going down the start finish line. The gap is slowly starting to come down, 0.33, 0.32. It really is coming down now, and we are into the 2/10 margin between the two. I'm not quite sure whether Ronald will go free. He has a look to the inside, fills his mirrors early on the brakes. The tides, this isn't the lap, but in the background, Anton Dupin looking up the inside. He does exactly the same, locks up though. It was like he was following Dominic Forster a little too closely, because if one driver makes one mistake and the driver behind makes a very similar one, it makes you think that Anton Dupin was just following Dominic that extra bit too close.
Yeah, that just, what is it they call it, target fixation, when you've got that car in front and you're basically copying them, and if they make a mistake, the likelihood of you doing the same is certainly higher. But you got to, Ronald Moons driving really, really well at the wheel of that Porsche 911 RSR, really impressive stuff. Has a look up the inside of Sufi, but not quite there. But he's really on a charge, and it's great watching a driver when you can tell they've just got good momentum and they're building their confidence all the time. And you can just tell from the body language of the car as well. He's just looking really racy there as well. But up at the front, goodness me, the Munich missiles, the BMW M8, top 4 positions locked out by the German manufacturer right now, with Billy Fletcher and the Ford in 5th, the first of the non-BMW runners.
Yeah, he's still doing a great job nonetheless. He's 20 positions from where he started. The next target for him will be Chris Moretta, who isn't massively far away up the road. Chris Moretta crosses the start-finish line now. Let's have a look to see when Billy Fletcher does so. In theory, that's not the timing beam. It is just the start-finish line. He does it now. There's somebody else coming out the pits as well. I didn't quite catch who that was. Was it Stuart Musselwhite? No, it wasn't. Pardon me. It was, there we go, Scotty Angelo has left the pits for Simtech, and he's quite a way down the order in that Ferrari. We've got, I've just noticed on the timing tower, we've got 4 BMWs at the very bottom of the timing tower and 4 BMWs at the very top. So it seems like a car that you either like or you don't. Personally, I haven't got massive amounts of experience in the BMW, but just going off that, it seems like it's quite a Marmite car, and the Ferrari, sadly, is a bit towards the slower end of the field, because we go up from Scotty Angelo to another Ferrari. That's Paul Clist. Then Steve Norman is just a little further up for Vulcan Sim Racing. His teammate is doing a great job though, Dominic Forster. There he is. He has lost out to Anton Dupin, but even with that mistake, he's caught once again right back up to the tail end of Anton. But look who's behind them. There is Mariusz Janka for Manatee. We know the potential of those Manatees. Yesterday, I think it was 3 Manatee BMWs battling toe-to-toe with the G-Drive Racing Exemia cars for the top 5 positions. And I'm guessing Mariusz has been practicing with his fellow GT Pro drivers just to see what he can do in terms of pace. But Mariusz Janka getting very close to Dominic Forster. And Anton Dupin will be rubbing his hands together, looking in his mirrors, hoping that Mariusz slows down the Vulcan Sim Racing Ferrari. And in the distance, we've still got this battle going on. Ronald Moons trailing very closely to Matthias Sufi.
Yeah, let's see if he'll do another round the outside at the Parabolica. He knows it works, but maybe he's thinking, oh God, I'll never make that one work again, no chance. But he's in the draft. He's in just the right position. Let's see if he has a look at it into the Parabolica. Goes to the more conventional inside. Oh, big lock up. Big lock up there. That puff of smoke just hit the brakes and locked up there. Got a little bit frisky there, and that is just given. That's just given that he's got all that work to do again. He's got to build up here. He might just have a bit of a draft benefit, maybe just the last bit of the draft from Sufi in front of him going down the straight there. But Ronald Moons, the number 69, he'll have to get moving again. And of course, we've got some great racing brands here taking part. We've got Ferrari, we've got Porsche, we've got Ford as well, and BMW too. And they all have such a heritage here at Monza in particular. And the most famous sports car race ever here at Monza was the Monza 1000 kilometers. And first of all was won, of course, by Ferrari. In fact, the first 3 Monza 1000 kilometers were won by Ferrari. But actually the Ford, in its original guise, the Ford GT40, back in 1968, won that race with Hawkins and Britain David Hobbs taking the victory there. But it's 6 wins apiece, halfway between Ferrari and Porsche in the Monza 1000 kilometers. But today, it's all about BMW, who haven't won it outright. But do you remember the BMW M1, Jack? That wonderful machine is, whoa, Kevin Murray, he heads off out of Ascari. But yeah, the BMW M1 won its class 4 times in a row, so quite successful in period.
I do remember the BMW M1, and I've got a sort of personal connection to that slightly, because when I first started sim racing all those years ago, almost 5 years ago now, I joined a league and they were racing those BMW M1s, and they are very tricky to drive, and I found out the hard way. I'd spent a lot of time on my roof, but it seems like BMW have nailed it this time, and they've got their M8 on par. Look at the separation between them as well. Rob Thiessen leading the way, followed by Ben Thane still. There's Camille Yagizoglu and Chris Moretta, and there's big gaps between these guys, and then Billy Fletcher's quite a way back as well, and the top 5 seem to have well over 5 seconds between them all at the moment. So I'm not sure whether that will come down to strategy towards the end of the race, but we can't rule out Billy Fletcher as well, because he's been working his way up through the order, and he's going slightly quicker than the rest of the top 5. For example, on the last lap, he did a 1 minute 45. 1 minute 47.04, and that was quite a slow lap for Billy. Actually, I was looking at the best laps, so sorry about that. But yeah, on the last lap, Billy Fletcher did a 1 minute 47.04. The next car to do that behind him was Matthias Sufi in P9. So whether Billy has started to regret that very early pit stop, but it will be interesting to see just how that will play off for him. We had an off track for our P4 driver. Let's see what he did. The car throws into the inside. Does he just run slightly wide? I think he does indeed. Clips the gravel. Lucky to keep that in the straight line. Goes bouncing over the curbs. And we had an incident with Scotty Angelo as well. Let's see what happens to Scotty. We saw him a couple of laps ago. Does he hit the curb? He does indeed. Keeps it out the wall. Maybe. Great driving from Scotty. He knew it was going in and stamped on the brakes. Kept it out the wall. So Scotty didn't have to beam himself up. But Scotty Angelo, the American for Simtech Racing, back out on the circuit and proceeding on. Just making sure he gets out of the way, because I think he may be a lap down on quite a few drivers now. But he's still continuing on, and that's what it's all about.
Yep, it's never over till it's over, and that's about endurance racing. You just got to keep on turning laps. And talking about our leaders, you make a good point about how, you know, they're quite spread out now, sort of 5 seconds or so between each driver at the front. This is the danger zone of the race. You know, we've been driving for, we're now just going past half distance, 47 minutes down of this 90-minute race, as we see Moons going to the inside with the Porsche, but has to think better of it. Sufi good on the brakes in the Ferrari, but Yeah, this is the time when if you've got that kind of big gap behind you, big gap in front of you, where keeping your concentration and just focusing on hitting your marks, hitting your apexes and braking points, because it's very, very easy to lose concentration at this stage. And if you do, you just take one wheel over the grass and you're in the wall. And then it's race over. And that is what makes the best drivers, when they can keep their concentration, keep that mental focus all the way through to the end of the race.
It really is, and we know how easy it is to make a mistake. It's much easier to make a mistake than to not make one. But Matthias Sufi will be hoping that he doesn't make one at this point, weaving his way through Lesmo 2. Look how close Ronald Moons is now. This battle has been roaring away for the past sort of 5, 6, almost 7 laps now. We saw the great overtake from Ronald Moons over Marius Janko, who has now lost out to Anton Dupin even more now. Dominic Forster has dropped back even more from Anton Dupin, because he's got a Marius Janko from Manatee Racing in between that pairing, and Ronald Moons getting that perfect overtake a few laps ago, and then that big lock-up going into Parabolica. He wasn't even going for the position, I don't think. He just had a little look and got a little too eager on the brakes and locked up going into Parabolica once again. Every time we look at Ronald Moons, he seems to be going through Parabolica or on the run up to it, so maybe it's just fate, because that's where the position is going to happen. That's where the position change is going to happen, and it wouldn't surprise me with Ronald, because he's in the top 10 at the moment and he's trying to get himself up into P9, and if he just Control C and Control V copies and pastes the move he did earlier, well, I'm not sure he will. We won't have time for that. Going into turn 1, he has a look up the inside of Matthias Sufi. He's got the position on the timing screen. Does he get it slowed down in time? I don't think he will. He's got to go over the curb and cuts the corner. Ronald Moon is losing out there, and he will have a slowdown, and Anton Dupin, I think, will get the position as well. So Anton Dupin in the top 10, everybody. He's only lost 3 positions from where he started now. This is an absolutely brilliant comeback drive from the Flemish Simsports driver.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic drive from Anton Dupin. He was really solid at Sebring, and he's done everything right. You know, it's so easy to get, if you make a mistake on lap 1 or you're involved in someone else's incident, it's so easy to just get frustrated, overdrive, and then make more mistakes, and they just sort of multiply into each other. Mistakes often do breed mistakes, but he's been able to keep his head calm and get back and turn some consistent laps, and he's done just that, and he's been rewarded with a top 10 finish. However, one thing he's not been rewarded with is a clear view. Now he's got to take the turn of looking at that horrible Chaz Draycott media logo on the back of that Ferrari in front of him, the poor guy. So he'll be desperate to get by Sufi and make his way up into the top 10.
Let's hope so. We know how quick Anton Dupin has been throughout the race. He's been posting very, very quick and consistent times throughout, constantly being in the 1 minute 46s. To put that in reference, everybody but the lead pairing is consistently in the 1:46. It's just about Kamil Yagazoglu trying to prove me wrong as hard as he can with a 1 minute 46.01. But Kamil all the way up in P3 at the moment, and Chris Moretta, he came out the pits quite close to the Dynamics racing car, but he's really dropped back, and you heard that Ford sort of whining away in the background. There is Billy Fletcher. Not much between the two of those now. 2 seconds, and Billy Fletcher will be on the tail end of the Meraki Racing BMW, the number 888. So the 888 will end up with the 388 under its rear wing. The closest cars on circuit. We've been looking at them pretty much all race. I've been trying to find another battle that's been going on, and it's quite hard, but I'm sorry, we can't look away from it. It's the only battle that's really happening at the moment. Ronald Moons leading Marius Janka, and Dominic Forster for Vulcan Sim Racing slowly starting to fall off the coattails.
Yep, it's all happening there in the midfield, and it's always tight in the midfield. Looking at that Ford, it's just such a sleek design that they followed for that car that Billy Fletcher's at the wheel of right now, and Anton Dupin also. And it was amazing. We talked about homologation earlier, how when you go racing in this type of motorsport, often you have to sell a certain number of road-specific examples to qualify to race. And basically that's to stop people making complete one-off prototype machines, which we saw in the late 90s with the GT1 category, things like the CLK GTR and the Porsche 911 GT1 and things like that. But actually Ford, they in fact, even though the car costs £420,000, they actually had the luxury of picking their buyers. So people had to apply and say, yes please Mr. Ford, I would like to buy one of your Ford GTs for £420,000. And there were some very famous and very wealthy people who were told, no, they're not important enough. But one of the people who was important enough was Amy MacDonald, the Scottish pop singer. She, I don't know if she still owns it, but she certainly did get one when they came out.
I'm going to pretend I know who she is. I know that's probably slightly
Oh.
offended you. I knew as soon as I was saying that I wouldn't go down
you
well.
would maybe recognise her some of the songs, perhaps. I will not do any renditions. We don't want to lose our 900 valuable subscribers who subscribe for racing, not rubbish karaoke. But in fact, funnily enough, we do have a lot of Belgian and German and Dutch drivers in the field. They will certainly know who Amy MacDonald is, because she actually has incredible fame out on the continent.
Once again, I'm going to have to pretend I know who she is. I'll have a listen a little later. But I know we keep getting distracted. There is a race going on, apparently. Marius Janka has managed to get past Ronald Moon. So Ronald very, very close to the tail end of Matthias Sufi. Not just a few laps ago, but Anton Dupin has put pay to that and worked his way all the way up into P10, almost P9. And Ronald Moon just dropped right the way back. And I'm guessing Dominic Forster will be coming back for a little bit of redemption, because he almost got shown up by Ronald Moons, and he showed how capable he was behind the wheel of that Porsche. Dominic has dropped back since then. He's still gained one position from where he started. We've had a change a little further up. That's Anton Dupin going up the inside of Sufi into Ascari. The Simracersworld Ferrari sadly dropping back there. And it looks like he's going to rise a challenge once again. Anton Dupin in the Flemish Simsports 4 GT. He went to the inside, maybe trying to defend the position. Let's have a look a little further from a different camera angle. There we go. That was quite a good one. There we go. So Matthias Sufi down into P10. Anton Dupin promoted himself up into P9. And it seems like the Fords are very good at comeback drives, because Anton Dupin, he's been right the way down the bottom end of the order and he's worked his way up into P9. And Billy Fletcher has done pretty much the same, right the way down the order, and worked his way up into P5, and he's now only half a second away from Chris Moretta.
Yeah, speaking of Billy Fletcher, expect him to come into pit lane in the next 10 minutes because he will be running out of fuel within that time frame. He came in at about minute 24, it's now minute 54. We're expecting a stint length of about 40 minutes. But yeah, he's right on the back of Moretta here, and this would break the BMW stronghold in the top four. And for Billy Fletcher, our third place finisher at Sebring and a championship contender, he will be wanting him. He's looking very, very frisky here, right on the back of Moretta. He goes to the outside. They want to see if this will work.
Oh, it looks like he might just have the momentum around the outside of Chris Moretta, but whether Chris will pull out of the move or not, I don't think he had a choice there. Billy Fletcher swoops around the outside, grabs the corner, and look at that momentum he's carried through as well. He's not just got the position, he's made it stick and slowly started to build up his gap already, but there we go. You see Chris Moretta diving into the draft, trying to make the most of what he can of that very speedy 4 GT. But Billy Fletcher, everybody, gained 21 positions, started in P25, 25th position. He's up into 4th at the moment. So he's got past the first of the 4 BMWs. The next target for him is 10 seconds up the road, which isn't unattainable for him. Well, there we go, into the pit lane. He gets the position made on Chris Moretta, and sadly has to lose out straight away, dives into the pits. And PT, your prediction was right, into the pits this time. And Chris Moretta is back up into 4th position. Let's see whether we get anybody else in the pit lane. I'm guessing we might get Antoine Dupin coming in very, very shortly, because he pitted 1 lap after Billy Fletcher. And that's quite interesting as well, because the 4 GT, one of the 4 GTs pitted on lap 13, and the second of them pitted on lap 14. So lap 13 and 14 for the 4 GTs at the moment. So whether that's a strategy that they've worked together on, or they've sort of got common knowledge about. But Anton Dupin, I can only imagine he's got about 1 lap of fuel left, and it'll be interesting to see whether different cars, obviously with their different fuel consumptions, have to pit earlier or later. And Billy Fletcher has had a perfect pit stop, and he has come out of the pits in P14.
Yep, so that should be Billy Fletcher fueled to the end of the race, but when he gets to the end of the race, he is going to have the lightest car on the track for sure, because he will be just on fumes by that point. So he might need to be careful with his fuel consumption throughout the next little while. Of course, from that 3.5 litre twin turbo, it's actually called an EcoBoost engine, but there is absolutely nothing eco about it. Even if you're doing a really good fuel save, you'll be lucky to get 5 miles to the gallon out of that machine. So, yeah, it's a thirsty girl, is that big Ford. So he'll need to watch about that. But although he's made the switch from the Porsche to the Ford, well, he seems to be fitting in nicely with this Detroit machine.
Yeah, he certainly is doing a good job behind the wheel of that 4GT, and it looks balanced. Like he's got so much trust in that car already. Like you say, he swapped from the Porsche to the Ford, and we know he was having issues in that Porsche going into the hairpin at Sebring. Looped the car around a couple of times, and just look how, not necessarily aggressive, but how planted the car is. He could just throw it in and fully well expect it to respond and well, just be happy underneath his command, because Billy Fletcher, he's something else at the moment. He's doing an absolutely amazing job, and there we go. As I expected, Anton Dupin is in the pits behind the wheel of the second of the 4GTs out on circuit in that Flemish Simsports livery. Oh, I love that Flemish Simsports livery. I don't think I'll ever get over how good it looks. It's just the spec map, everything works, and it's with it being on a quick car as well, it just makes it that much better.
Yeah, you do love it. I have to say, for me, my liveries of choice, given that I'm not a high-flying pro sim racer like yourself, Jack, who, funnily enough, right on, so that is good timing. Taylor Lane, your teammate from Fiercely Forward, on screen right now. So I've got that. It's great. I've got the freedom to put silly liveries on my cars. So my 911 RSR has an M&M's livery on it. So it's bright yellow with M&M's. All the M&M's men run on the side of the car, which is pretty cool. I've got an Iron Brew Kia Optima as well, which is quite cool. And then my 919 hybrid Porsche is actually, I've converted that into a Konica Minolta Cadillac DPI as well. I could go on, but I want to make sure we've still got some viewers left by the end.
Speaking of Fiercely Forward, and with it being my teammate, I've got my Fiercely Forward top on. So massive thanks to Ollie Slade for giving me that. It's great. It does get a little toasty when you hear it in the commentary box, but it's just good. It's just good.
You've got your own merch, Jack.
Yeah, we've got our own merch. Then got to take it seriously at Fiercely Forward, and I think Taylor Lane is doing exactly that. Up into 12th position, he's gained 16 positions from where he started.
He has moved fiercely forward. He is living the brand right now. Well, speaking of merch, I'm wearing some motorsport merch. I'm wearing a Motorbase Rory Butcher Ford Focus ST merch, ready for the new British touring car season. And young Rory, fellow Scotsman, he was looking pretty quick in pre-season testing at was it Donington or Snetterton last week?
Well, I can't wait for that to kick underway, because I know how good the BTCC can be. Bearing in mind, last year I was stood shouting around in my living room at the final round of Brands Hatch, and I almost want to hope for exactly the same thing here at Monza, because that came down to the very, very last lap, as so did the final round of the British Touring Car Championship at Brands Hatch, and that was for the championship as well, funnily enough. And if we can get that sort of competitive nature in the GT Pro and the GT Evo series, it will be great to see. I think we've had an incident for somebody. Oh no, it popped up. Oh, it was just Giuseppe Nazzo. It came up as a crash, but it turns out he's just gone off the circuit. Let's see what happened to Giuseppe going through the first chicane. Oh, he over-rotates the car, hits the curb, and it just swings the car around, styles it out. 360 degrees later, he gets it pointed the right way and continues on. So the Italian going for a little loop around the first chicane. No major damage. You've got to be careful over these sausage curbs though, because if you hit them at the wrong angle, that could cause floor damage, and at a circuit which is so reliable on top speed and as little drag as possible, that will really hurt your lap times, and with still half an hour of the race to go, it will really hurt your final finishing position.
Yeah, you got it. That's one thing that the iRacing service is really good at, is basically simulating floor damage and the effect that it can have on a race car. And like you say, God, do I hate little Scots. Those sausage curbs are just horrible, and when you go over one of them, you really know about it. But Giuseppe, I tell you what, you can trust the Italian. I tell you what, as crashes go, that's got to be the most stylish recovery from a crash I've ever seen. Just a perfect pirouette and then back in the right direction again. But unfortunately for Giuseppe, this has not been a happy home race for him here at Monza. It's funny how sometimes the home race for drivers, like you look at Lewis Hamilton at Silverstone, well, he just rules the roost around there. But John Cleland, fellow Scot, he never really got on with Knockhill, his local track. I think he only won once at Knockhill, and it just wasn't a track that really suited him. So no matter where the track is based, it's the layout still got to suit you.
It does indeed, and the layout of Monza really is suiting Rob Thiessen at the moment. He's still in the lead, but Ben Thanes seems quite close at the moment. 2.5 seconds between that pairing. So Ben Thanes, whether he's just opened to the taps a little bit, or Rob Thiessen has maybe slightly slowed down, hoping to hoping to get his teammate back within the draft assistance and then just work up away from the pack. Well, I'm guessing these two will be coming in the pits very shortly because they both pitted on lap 18, so as far as I'm aware, they will have to pit at the end of this lap, otherwise they've got to be very careful about running out of fuel. We've had an incident for Chris Moretta. He was in 4th position in theory, I think he was right the way down in 17th position on the road. That's him spinning through 90 degrees. Quite an odd incident, if I'm honest. Gets the car on the grass where there's very little traction, so he can put his foot through the floor and get it rotated around, but that really isn't what he wanted. After a pit stop, that will have lost all the time he might have gained in the pit stop and a bit more. We saw Anton Dupin in the background, and he's still there if you go back live with them. You can see how close Anton is now. But Chris Moretta, not what he wanted at all, and what that will do is that will open up Billy Fletcher's race once again, because Billy Fletcher now up into P7, and 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 cars in front of him still have to pit. I do believe, no, pardon me, only 2 cars in front of him have to pit. Taylor Lane, Ronald Moons and Kimber Hay, and they have all come into the pits this time by. So there is Kimber Hay, Ronald Moons just pulled into his pit stop, and there is Taylor Lane. Billy Fletcher just passing the start-finish line now, and Billy Fletcher up into P4. 12 seconds up to Kamil Yagizoglu, so he has lost a bit of time to the P3 driver. But the leaders at the moment, Rob Thiessen and Ben Thanes, both for G-Drive Racing at Eximia, both in the BMW M8, dominating the class at the moment. And if they don't pit in this lap, I'm not quite sure how they're doing it, but the fuel management they're surely doing something right, because most of the other drivers out on the field pitted on the lap prior. He's hugging the inside. I'm guessing he's going into the pits this time, but he's done a great job just to pilot that car at the top end of the field and still save enough fuel to go a lap extra than anybody else.
Yep, solid stint from both G-Drive Exima drivers, and for Thanes actually slightly quicker. He was definitely further away than that after the first stint. And the interesting team in G-Drive Exima, maybe they need to get themselves a good skin product sponsor like Dove or Olay or something like that, because G-Drive Exima, they're going to need some.
Well, indeed. Kamil Yagizoglu still in 3rd position for Dynamics Racing, working his way through Ascari. Billy Fletcher now 12 seconds behind on his way up to Ascari. Sven Calvert quite the way back now, followed by Jesse Hendricks. You heard the Ferrari whizzing away in the background. So 4 Dynamics cars, right, I'm still wrong, 5 Dynamics cars in the top 10. Kamil Yagizoglu, currently the lead Dynamics Racing car, followed by Sven Calvert and Jesse Hendricks. Jesse Hendricks P2 in the bronze category at the moment. Then we go back to Thies van der Berg in the BMW, then Bram van Uitven in the Porsche, and whether Dynamics are just hoping to drag all the points they can get for a team's championship, I'm not 100% sure, but they're doing something right, because all the Dynamics cars are at the very pointy end of the field. And Bram van Uitven, we've got to remember, he was involved in an incident towards the start of the race, and like you mentioned, Peter, you do get 1 iRacing fast repair, but surely that could also knock you out of your rhythm as well. So something that maybe you don't have control over. It might have, just unsettled him a little bit and made him slightly more nervous, but it doesn't seem to have affected him, because he's come back from that in that beautifully liveried Dynamics car and continued on, and he's still P7 or P7 overall and P3 in class. Yeah,
he's certainly recovered from that incident very well, like you say, and for Dynamics Racing, with so many drivers, I wonder what the team dynamic is like in said team with all these different drivers. And of course, quite interestingly, they're spreading their bets on the manufacturer. You know, we've seen them, there's a Ferrari in there, there's a BMW, there's a Porsche. Not sure if they're using a Ford or not, but so they're certainly spreading their bets rather than. So, for example, in sim racing, you'll see teams a lot of the time they'll basically go testing together, and instead of obviously one driver practicing on their own, if you've got 3 or 4, you're effectively tripling or quadrupling the track time that you've got, and therefore the data you're gathering and the overall setup time, if you like, to see what works on the car and what doesn't. But of course that is negated when you're using different cars. However, by spread betting by having a team full of different cars, that means that they're always going to have one car that's on the pace.
It is indeed. Ronald Moon's now under pressure from Marius Janka into Ascari, gets the move done. So Ronald Moons, he had the pace at the start of the race, but it looks like it's just slowly started to slip through his fingers at the moment. The recovering Chris Moretta is now only 2 tenths behind him. He's in the draft and he's gaining very, very quickly. So I'm guessing Chris will go for a move either into Parabolic or into turns 1 and 2. Chris following him in the draft, can't decide who to follow at the moment. He goes for the BMW, punching the perfectly shaped hole in the air, and oh, that's commentator's curse for you. Loops the car through 180 degrees. Great avoidance driving from Anton Dupin in that Ford GT, but it looked like the car just got unsettled, and the mid-corner of Parabolica, and Chris Moretta once again comes to strife and drops down even further. He was in P3 for a little while, then P4, and that's where he settled, and he's now right the way down in P12, very, very close to becoming P13. Let's see what he can do about defending from Dominic Forster into turns 1 and 2. I think Dominic might even get the move completely made by turn 1. He does, but Chris Moretta not willing to give up just as yet. Let's see what happens. Yep, there we go. Chris Moretta demoted down into P13, and Anton Dupin, I'm not sure how he avoided that in time, but he did an absolutely amazing job. He's continued on. Next target for him will be the ever fruitful Ronald Moons up into P9, who has currently got his hands full with the Manatee number 88 BMW of Marius Janka.
Yeah, Dupin was very, like you say, very, very good avoidance there, but super unlucky as well. It's no fault of his own, and he had to take big avoiding action. And actually, he was really, really fortunate not to actually get into the gravel and then, of course, straight into the wall, and was able just to keep it on the black stuff. Oh, Moretta makes another mistake. Oh, my goodness me, he's having a disaster. And what did we talk about earlier, Jack? How concentration, keeping that mental focus as we've gone past the hour mark and we've gone towards the end. And is he going to give up here? He's certainly parked. He's still, yep, he's pulled back to pit lane. That's a shame for Chris Moretta. Yeah, that's what we talked about, just maintaining that concentration and that focus all the way to the end of the race. It's a long race, 90 minutes. Might not sound it, but it really is. And that is what these front runners have been able to do. And poor old Chris Moretta has just had a couple of little mistakes there. It's a little bit of brain fade, it looks like.
Yeah, not sure what has happened to Chris Moretta, but he's slowly started to drop down the order, and it seems like he's retired from the race as well, so he will join the likes of John McConville. And I saw a message a little earlier on, Sebastian Herbert very kindly put in the YouTube chat, bad luck for Simracersworld Esports today. John with a wheel failure and Stuart with a screen freeze. So Stuart Musselwhite, I'm not sure whether he's still out on circuit. Let's have a quick look. No, the timing can't seem to find him, so two of the Simracersworld Esports cars sadly not going to cross the line. They've still got one out on circuit. That's Matthias Sufi, if I can actually get a camera angle. There we go. Matthias Sufi in P11 at the moment, so he is upholding the honour for Simracersworld. And whether he can gain another position and get into the top 10, I very much doubt, because the person he would have to overtake is Anton Dupin, and we all know how quick he is. Even after that avoidance action, he's back in his rhythm. I say that, commentator's curse once again, get to slow down and has to concede a lot of time, almost 1.5 seconds he's lost there going into Lesmo 1 and up towards Lesmo 2. And I think I should just stop, because my commentator's curse is extra strong this evening, Peter.
It's more infectious than COVID-19, I have to say. It's well, we all do it. I have to say, it's amazing how we're meant to be the experts up here in the commentary box, and you'll say, oh, what a great drive, so solid, and then woof, off they'll go into the gravel trap. But it happens to the very best of them, so you'll have to excuse us there, folks, as long as the drivers aren't listening in to us while out on track. So, looking at Marius Janka, 88 car, 88. The Manatee BMW, good looking car that, with Moons right behind him in the Porsche. He's certainly had an eventful race as well, and really, I think Moons, he really deserves a good finish, because he's had some really, really strong performance throughout this race. We've only got 20 minutes to go, and look at that, Billy Fletcher up to 4th position. Maybe an outside chance of a podium for him, perhaps, Jack?
I've got to say, I think that is well and truly on the cards, but actually, I say that, he's been gaining and gaining and gaining, and over the last couple of laps, I'm not sure he has gained as much as he would like now. He was 12 seconds behind Kamil Yagizoglu, going on to lap 39, which is the lap, or going on to lap 40, pardon me, which is the lap we're on at the moment. He has lost 1.5 seconds, so whether Billy Fletcher has just been thrown out of his rhythm, or he's just driving a safe race because he's got the same margin in front of him as he does behind him to Jesse Hendricks. So Billy Fletcher, he's done all the hard work, gone from 25th all the way up to 4th, and whether he's just happy where he is, he will get the win at the moment in the bronze class, and he will just be outside that overall podium position. But I'm not, well, knowing Billy, I'm not sure he's wanting to give up at the moment. He will be full chat towards the end of the race by the sounds of it, and look how close, well, I say that, they were close. Rob Thiessen is now still in the lead. Ben Thanes dropped back massively from where he was. What was the gap a couple of laps ago? 2.5 seconds, I think. And it was the car just behind Rob Thiessen that I got confused with. As soon as I saw them disappear into the distance, I thought, hang on a minute, they've got very, very close. But Rob Thiessen has built that gap up to Ben Thames now, 4.2 seconds between the lead duo.
Yeah, they came into pit lane for their second and final pit stop right beside one another. So, yeah, Jason's just been able to just stretch the gap out. But I tell you what, for G-Drive, you're going to be very happy indeed with these two BMWs putting in a 1-2 finish as it stands right now with 41 laps complete. Now, what are we looking at here? We've seen two Ferraris here. Scotty Angelo gets a little bit of a help there from Sophie, I think.
He does
dear.
indeed. So the American going for a little bit of gardening, not what he was looking for. To be fair, it did look like he had a bit more room on the outside, and Sufi did what he could to get out of the way, but not what he was looking for. So Scotty Angelo not had the greatest of races today, and you can see he is the last of the runners at the moment, all the way down in P25. The retirements we've heard are Chris Moretta, Stuart Musselwright, Jonathan Steggers, John McConville, and you will see Sebastian Herber up, but Sebastian Herber is one of the race directors here at Simracersworld, so please do ignore him. Well, don't ignore him on the timing tower. If he tells you you're in trouble, you more than likely are, and if he tells you you're doing a good job, you more than likely are, but just ignore him on the timing tower.
But he does drive a BMW, in case you're wondering.
He does drive a BMW, he does indeed. Sven Calvert now defending from Dieter Ertz in the Dynamics Racing cars. So Dynamics Racing versus Dynamics Racing, and we know how good these guys are towards the top end of the order, because Camille Agizoglu, one of the Dynamics Racing drivers, in third, Jesse Hendricks in fifth position, Bram van Uitven in seventh position, and they're the lead three Dynamics Racing cars. We then go back a little further, we've got Sven Calvert in 16th, Dieter Ertz in 17th, and Thies van den Berg in 18th. So Dynamics, no matter where you look on the circuit, you're going to end up looking at one of the Dynamics cars, and that livery on Thies's car is very, very nice. I haven't noticed it, but my God, I really like that one as well.
Yeah, they know how to design a car, don't they? And of course, there's plenty of room to express yourself on that enormous BMW M8 GTE. It's almost as much of a spread bet as Red Bull have in Formula One, of course, with their Red Bull cars, and also the AlphaTauri as well as they're now known. Previously, Toro Rosso. So 15 minutes to go, not long left in this second round of the Simracersworld GT Evo Series. I have to say, we've got a classic calendar of circuits. Some of my real favourites. We were at Sebring 2 weeks ago, today at Monza, and then we're off to Watkins Glen in 2 weeks' time. But I tell you, the dark horse I'm looking forward to is Mosport in Canada, now known as Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. We go there in a month's time. There's going to be some good draft battles there as well.
I think there will be as well. That was the one I was really, really looking forward to. I know my way around the circuit just from watching videos. Personally, I have never driven it, and it's a circuit I'm not sure whether I'll get on with, because I can imagine it's quite hard to find a flow because it's very undulating. There's lots of different types of corners, whether they're long sweeping corners, quick little kings, or like back-to-back tight right-handers to go onto the back straight. I think that will really throw a spanner in the works, possibly for the BMWs. Yes, they'll be good down the back straight, but I think the Fords will come to light, and maybe even the Porsches, because we know how good the Porsches are, as proven by, who was it? I think it was Ronald Moons. It was indeed, going around the outside at Parabolica. We know how confident and how quick the Porsches are around very tight, twisty, or very tight corners, and I'm pretty sure the BMWs will struggle to keep up with the Porsches and the Ferraris and the Fords even around there, because they're quite a heavy car, and with a circuit that is quite unpredictable, I think, at times, because a while ago there was a slight little patch that had to be introduced into iRacing, because I think they were called the landmines, going through turns 2 and 3, where there were little bits of tarmac which had been replaced in real life, and when iRacing scanned the circuit they were there, and whether it was just a slight hitbox on one of the cars, very similar issue as to what affected the TCR not so long back, if you hit it at the wrong angle you would end up, well, going to space. So let's hope they've got that fixed. I'm not 100% sure, because personally I haven't driven there before. But if you wanted this championship to get any closer, that would be the way to do it, just to bring a couple of cars into space and get somebody new at the front.
Well, the thing about Mosport is that it's got so many, particularly in the opening sector of the lap, so many really high-speed corners. It's all about that high-speed aero and grip on your car. So, yeah, I think you're right. Perhaps the Ford and maybe even particularly the Porsche might be strong there as well. But next time out at Watkins Glen, it's got a really kind of a blend of everything. Plenty of straights. Horsepower is important, but it's plenty of technical sections as well. So getting the car set up, you really need to find a nice balanced setup there. So at Watkins Glen, we might see a little bit more of a mix-up of the manufacturers to break up this BMW 1-2-3 dominance that we've got right now in this second round.
Yeah, it'll be great to see. And look at the teammates, Dynamics racing side by side into the second chicane. Dieter Aerts still trailing Sven Calbert. So we'll see what those two can do. And speaking of Dynamic Simulators, they are one of the series sponsors. So just rattle you through the sponsors. We've got Dynamic Simulators, Porsche Sport. We've seen them in chat this evening. Hello, everybody. I'm not sure whether it'll be Luke or Mark, I think. Strasser as well, and Brutzi. So thank you very much to every single one of them. We really wouldn't be able to do it without you. And Porsche Sport saying, is that a Porsche in P7? Thank the Lord. Yes, there is a Porsche in P7. We looked at him not so long back. Bram van Outsven, the lone Porsche in the top 7. Only a couple of positions back though. Ronald Moons, there he is. So making Porsche Sport very happy. 2 Porsches in the top 10 at the moment. And Ronald, he's in a world of his own really, because the car in front of him, Marius Janka, is slowly starting to disappear. He's been very close. He's still within draft range, 0.9 of a second between the pairing. But it seems like every time I look, every couple of laps, they slowly start to separate. And it's gone up to around about a second now. So whether that battle will just keep on getting closer and further away. But look who's in the distance. Anton Dupin looking to pick up another position, currently in 10th at the moment. First target of him will be Ronald Moons and then Marius Janka. So Anton Dupin still hard on the charge. And we'll go back up to Billy Fletcher. Now 15, that's Camille Yagizoglu. Now 15 seconds behind Camille Yagizoglu. So I think Billy Fletcher has just slowly started to lose out here, but he's still got exactly the same gap, if not more, to Jesse Hendricks. So the position is all but secured going into the final 10 minutes of the race, Peter.
Yeah, and it looks like Fletcher will be able to leapfrog Dupin in the championship. Of course, Dupin finishing second at Sebring and Billy Fletcher finishing third. So for Fletcher, given that where he qualified, right at the back of the pack, he will be, I'm sure he will take this very much indeed. Just a bit of a mention also for our sponsor, Porsche Sport. We today launched the very first episode of the Porsche Sport podcast as well. So do be sure to go on to PorscheSport.com and have a listen to that. You can also get it on Podbean as well. A weekly show talking all about all things racing and Porsche. So if you're a Porsche fan, have a listen.
Well, I will, because funnily enough, I am a Porsche fan, especially after the Porsche Club GB, the series we've been covering every Sunday, and that's just been getting ever closer. And with the release of Dorrington back with us, Parkins has got his hands full. We saw Ryan Parkins out yesterday in the GT Pro series in the Strasser Porsche Sport car. And that was a livery to behold as well. Sadly, we don't have one to look at this evening. But we still have the bud of the Porsches to look at. One of our brand new entries to the series. This man here, Roger Morton. This is his debut race in the Result Clothing number 24 car. He's gained 7 positions, started 22nd all the way up into 15th. And this is a great job. Bearing in mind it's only his first time out. And he's just behind his teammate. That's Dale Benison. That'll be a good little photo for social media a little later on. But it seems like that one of them has got the pace. So maybe Dale's just slightly struggled here at Monza compared to his teammate. And doing the right thing, letting him by, not wanting to slow him down at all. But it'll be interesting to see what Dale can do, like you say, going into Watkins Glen, because different circuits can bring different challenges, but also different benefits.
Yeah, they can. And that's, I think, particularly in the sim as well, it's... There's just there's some circuits that certain drivers just really, really love, and others they really don't get on with. I remember I ran in a series, an LMP2 car series with the Acura HPD, and I think it was, I can't remember, the 3 rounds, Mid-Ohio, Road Atlanta, and I can't remember the third one. It was obviously that memorable, and I was absolutely awful at Mid-Ohio, but at Road Atlanta, I managed to get on the podium, and it was same field, but it was just knew the Road Atlanta circuit more, and felt I could get more out of the car, and it's I'm sure that applies to many drivers, both in real and virtual racing.
I'm sure it does, and well, Monza's is quite a. I know it's going to be quite controversial, but I think it's quite a challenging circuit because it's all about the run you get out of the corners as much as it is the draft going into the corners. Because if you don't get a good run coming out of the corners, you might lose maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 miles an hour going onto one of the long straights here at Monza, and that can really add up throughout a 90-minute race, and that can drop you back quite a few positions as well. And we've seen Chris Moretta, he was really on a charge, looking good for a podium at one point, and then dropped down to P4, so still a great result for Chris Moretta, and made one mistake, threw him out of his rhythm, and I'm sure that didn't do much good for his tyres, then made another, and that really started to hurt his progress and his tyres, and sadly enough, coming out of Lesmo 1, over-rotated the car and into the gravel he went, and it just shows that although you can be in a good position at the start of the race, going into the end of the race, and it can really sort of put it on its head. And this, I guess, is almost an endurance race. Yes, it's split into 3 sprint races, as I referred to it earlier, but it is an endurance race overall, I think, because it's a lot of time you've got to spend behind the wheel of that car, and we're going to keep on coming back to it. It's all about that concentration and consistency, Peter.
Yeah, and I think that in this particular layout, there is quite a lot of time on full throttle, just going up the gears, driving in a straight line, which, in terms of keeping your concentration, it's very easy to let your mind wander a little, shall we say. Whereas if you go to a circuit like Lime Rock Park would be a good example, you're virtually hardly, or Laguna Seca would be the best example. I don't think you're driving straight. I don't think you've got the wheel straight at any point around Laguna Seca, so you've not really got the time to let your mind wander. But at circuits like Monza, when you're trucking down the straight, it's easy to let your mind wander. And we've seen a few drivers, particularly Chris Moretta, making a couple of mistakes later in the race when he's not got cars around him.
Yeah, it just shows that even the best can be caught out. But speaking of the best, Rob Thiessen still in the lead. The gap to his teammate Ben Thames has come back down once again. Only 3.2 seconds between the pairing. So it seems Ben Thames can't quite hook up the laps towards the start of the stint, but going into the end of the stint, the car really does start to suit him because he's bringing down the time to his teammate. On the last lap, he was half a second quicker. Rob Thiessen, our leader, with a 1 minute 47.02. Ben Thames with a 1 minute 45.56. Just to put that into perspective, that's only a quarter of a second slower than his fastest lap. So whether he's on fresh tyres or not, but his car will be very, very light going into the final 5 minutes of the race now. That is a very, very quick time from Ben Thames, and I've noticed looking at the timing screen that is exactly 1 second slower than the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, Tyson's certainly on optimum pace. He's been absolutely superb, and you wonder if Tyson in the 205 BMW G-Drive machine, you just wonder if he's now just managing the gap, not taking any risks through traffic. Of course, we're seeing a few lapped cars here, not taking any chances. He's got a little bit of time behind him, and maybe just consolidating the lead. But for sure, for Tains, I think it's you're spot on, Jack, in terms of where the speed comes out. How when the car's on a full tank of fuel, he's not been able to get the same pace as Tyson has. But when the fuel has burnt off, of course, the car just gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and that's obviously suiting him later on in the stint.
It is indeed. Just in front of our leader at the moment now is this battle here. Sven Calbert has just managed to work his way past Roger Morton, so Dynamics Racing taking Result Clothing Porsche. That's another position gained for Sven Calbert. We've seen him gain a few over the race, making amends for the earlier lost positions. He started in P13, he's now currently in 15th, and he's continuing to work his way up the order. Somebody who we've seen a hell of a lot of, just because he's constantly been around people that he's fighting for position, is Dominic Forster. He's now under pressure from Taylor Lane. You told us to look out for him, Peter, and you couldn't be more right, but he's in 13th position, looking to make it 12th position. He's gained 15 positions from where he started, so the number 32 firstly forward driver doing an amazing job, and even with very minimal time left at the end of the race, he's pushing harder than ever just to get that extra couple of positions, which obviously means points, and points mean prizes.
They do. I tell you what, if Taylor if he's he should be working on his qualifying runs between now and now in 2 weeks' time at Watkins Glen, because in the race he's been superb, but he's often had to start quite far back, or he's found himself quite far back early in the race, and he's always been kind of on the back foot, having to play catch up. But He's definitely got good pace in that fiercely forward car. Maybe he just really wants to live the team brand, Jack. Maybe he's just saying, well, I can't start on pole because then I'll just be going sadly backwards rather than fiercely forwards.
Well, it couldn't be more true, but at the moment he is only going fiercely forward. He's now side by side with Dominic Forster on the run up to turn 1. We know the Ferrari's good on the brakes. Let's see what Taylor can do behind the wheel of that Porsche. Great way of stopping it. You saw the nose drop down and almost slam into the ground. He hit the brakes so hard, didn't even see a puff of tyre smoke, so I'm not quite sure how he managed that. Very much later on the brakes than Dominic Forster, and he made it work. Managed to get his way through the first chicane and now through turn 3. I'm not quite sure how he managed that, because he left it very, very late, got it slowed down and continued on like it's just, well, another race or another day in the park, and he's done it. He's up into P12, so great driving from Taylor Lane, and I'm not sure he will pick up another position because it's 3 seconds up to Matthias Sufi, who is chasing down Ronald Moons, who is chasing down Anton Dupin, and Anton, he's up into P9 now, only 2 positions lower than where he started. And you said at the very, very start of the race, I think we were only 2 laps in, Peter, to keep an eye out for him, and we have, and he's all the way up in P9. Your predictions tonight have been spot on.
Yeah, I'll have to go and buy a lottery ticket, maybe get myself one of these Ford GTs. That'd be quite cool. Yeah, no, one thing that it has surprised me, I really am quite shocked that we've only got one Ferrari in the top 10, that's Hendricks in 5th. I really expected the Ferraris to be more competitive here. We've certainly got enough of them in the field, but given how popular they were at Le Mans, of course, many of the teams, the GT teams, come here to Monza before Le Mans because it's the kind of closest replication that they can get of Le Mans. And of course, with the Le Mans circuit being mostly a public road, you can't just go and test there whenever you like. So many of them do come to Monza to go testing. So it's been, I was expecting the Ferraris to do better, particularly in their home race, of course, as well. But clearly the Ferrari F1 team woes are, well, they're being replicated here in the Simracersworld GT Evo series.
They are indeed, but that 4GT in the hands, it's not Anton Dupin. It is the 4GT in the hands of Anton Dupin. I'm getting all my phrases mixed up now. We're getting towards the final 20 seconds of this race. Let's go back up to the leader, who will just get another lap in. Very, very similar to yesterday, where literally 15 seconds away from the start, 15 seconds left, crossed the start-finish line, did Bram van Putten. And now Rob Thiessen, another G-Drive car, crossed the line to go on to the final lap. So this is lap 51. Rob Thiessen is going on to, followed by his teammate Ben Thames, who has dropped back by quite a lot now. Maybe he's just decided there's no need to push the car and take excessive risks into this late on in the race, and he's now 5 seconds behind his G-Drive teammate. We've had an incident for Paul Clist, Dale Benison and Hendrik de Grave. Let's see what happened between this trio. Oh, I think that was Hendrik de Grave on the grass. Let's see what happened there. It was indeed. He's on the grass, can't slow it down, straight into the side of Dale Benison. So not quite sure what happened there. Whether we can get another angle of that, I don't think we can just as yet. We're going to have to focus on the end of the race, but quite an odd incident for Hendrik de Grave. It's like the car just uncontrollably went to the right hand side of the circuit and he couldn't slow it down on the grass. As we know, if you hit grass on slick tyres and you hit the brakes, nothing much is going to happen. In theory, if it's wet grass, you'll probably end up accelerating more than decelerating. But Rob Thiessen going through Ascari for the final time. The number 205 G-Drive car has led from lights to flag for a lot of it, or he's led the race for a lot of it. Ben Thames was in the lead as Rob Thiessen dropped down the order right the way down to P7. Worked his way back up through the order, made sure no mistakes had been made, got into the lead, pulled a gap, and for the final time, he comes around Parabolica, and Rob Thiessen crosses the line now and takes the win here at Monza for round 2 of the Simracersworld GT Evo Series. Great drive from the G-Drive Racing Academy car. Ben Thames crosses the line to take P2 now. Kamil Yagizoglu going around Parabolica for the final time as well. The Dynamics car coming across the line to round out the podium. And, well, I'm just going to let you explain, Peter, because you know who I'm going to click on, and I just want to hear what your reaction is.
Well, Billy Fletcher, what a drive from him to come from the very back of the grid in his new Ford GT, of course, switching from the Porsche 911 RSR from last time, but he is going to come home in 4th position. Our top bronze driver for the second week or second race in a row, he's going to come in 4th position, and I have to say, I think he will be very happy with that indeed. And hopefully we'll get the chance to have a chat with him in the post-race interviews.
I'm sure we will. Billy is always more than accommodating and wanting to chat. Here's Kimber Haight crossing the line to take P6. Bram van Uitven in P7. Marius Kjanke in P8. Anton Dupin with an absolutely amazing comeback drive in the second of the Fords crosses the line in P9. Sorry, the third of the Fords. The second Ford was Kimber Haight, so one Flemish Simsport Ford finishes in 6th position and the other in 9th, so great job by the Flemish Simsport guys. And Ronald Moons crosses the line to take P10. We'll have some more secured results as we get them and the session ticks over, but that was a very busy evening. There was bits of battling in between the race where everybody was nose to tail, a train of 5, 6, maybe even 7 cars, and then you get to another point where there's only a little duo of cars battling door to door, maybe trading a little bit of paint here and there. And who can we find in that? I think I saw Kimber Haight in there. There we go. That's a nice little photo for social media a little later on. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Look at that. Everybody stopped after the first chicane, deciding whether that be for photos or just because somebody else has done it. Everybody else is going to start doing it. I think we might even get treated to a final little parade lap. Let's have a look. Who can we have a look at that is leading the way? I think it's Dominic Forster. Well, he's very much leading the way of this. Well, it's supposed to be a slowdown lap, but he's very much speeding up. Who else have we got on this warm-up lap, on the cool-down lap? Kimber Haight as well. I'm wanting the session to tick over, but I think with everybody going around nice and slow, whether it will happen. Let's see whether we can get the results up for you. Maybe. Oh, no. They came up. There we go. So I'm going to hand you over to the very capable hands of Peter MacKay to bring you through the final results.
So for the second time in a row, Rob Tyson in the 205 G-Drive Exima machine wins here at Monza in the Simracersworld GT Evo Series. In second place, his teammate Ben Thanes in the number 9 G-Drive Exima machine, just 4 seconds back. Good drive from him. Rounding out the podium and rounding out a BMW lockout of the podium, Kamil Yagazoglu in the number 43 Dynamics Racing machine, making it an all Benelux region podium as well. In 4th, top Brit Billy Fletcher, number 388 in his new Ford, coming in 4th position. 5th was Jesse Hendricks. 6th, Kimber Haight. 7th was Bram van Uyten. 8th was Marius Janke. 9th, Anton Dupin. Good recovery drive from him. 10th, Ronald Moons, who gave us plenty of entertainment in his number 69 Porsche. 11th was Matteo Sufi in the Simracersworld Esports machine. 12th, Taylor Lane, the number 32. He certainly was going fiercely forward and looking after his team name well there. 13th was Dominic Forster. 14th, Steve Cooley. 15th, Sven Calbert. 16th was Roger Morton. 17th was Thijs Berke. And 18th was Stephen Norman. 19th was Dieter Ertz. 20th, Hendrik de Graaf, who was involved in a wee incident there at the end in his Porsche. 21st, the Italian Giuseppe Nazzo. 22nd, Kevin Murray. 23rd was the American Scotty Angelo. 24th, Dale Bennison. 25th, Paul Cliston, the year 1 custom-made flip-flop Ferrari. 26th was Chris Moretta after a couple of mistakes and retiring from the race about halfway through. 27th was Stuart Musselwhite after technical issues. 28th was Jonathan Steggers. And 29th, rounding out our field, was John McConville. And, of course, Sebastian Herberger is not in the race in 30th position. He, in fact, is the race steward. But for those wondering, he was sitting as the race steward in a BMW.
There's no other car to drive, evidently, for Seb Herbert. And I'm hoping we will get a couple of drivers in for the interviews. Let's hope so anyway. Just wait for the replay to catch up. But what we'll do, ladies and gentlemen, is we will bring in our eventual 4th place finisher and our bronze class winner, Billy Fletcher. What a drive. 21 positions gained and a new car for you. How did you do it?
I'm not sure. I might mess up as well. I pitted about a lap or two too soon on the first stint, so I had to save a lap and a half worth of fuel on the last stint there. I didn't think I was going to make the end, I'm not going to lie.
Well, you certainly did, and you did it in exactly the fashion you'd want to do it. And with starting at the back as well, was that something you wanted to do to get the incident points back under your belt? So obviously you gained 10 back for starting at the tail end of the field, or was it just something that you couldn't quite get in for qualifying? Like, what was the situation with not qualifying?
It was to take 10 incident points off of my overall tally. I'm hoping to put a protest in for a 4x I got on the first lap. One of the guys, I'm not sure what he was up to, but he kind of, like he got a slowdown and just stopped on the apex going into Lesmo 1, and I just tapped him and it gave me a 4x. So I'm hoping to clear that. So I had a better week in regards to incident points. I still managed to come away with 15 with that 4x, which is really frustrating. But with the racing I had, I would take that amount because it was really good fun coming through the field and having a race with people.
It was really, really fun to watch as well. And speaking of coming through the field, obviously, like you mentioned, it was to gain those incident points back. Going into the race and being sat at the very tail end of the field, what was the target? Was it just to keep it clean and let everybody else slow each other down and pick your way through, or were you going into it thinking, well, we might even get a podium here?
When I was on the warm-up lap, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to back right off and let them deal with their problems, and then I'll start picking them off. But as we went into turn 1, everyone braked so early, so I was like, I picked a gap in the middle. And I think I passed 3 cars into turn 1, and the car I jumped off the start anyway. And once I kind of got that point, and it seemed like people, I mean, this is a great league, and people were showing a lot of respect when I was racing them. So it did seem like people could see I had a fair bit of pace and weren't fighting it too much, which did help. But there was a few hairy round the outside passes, which I think were a touch pushing my luck. But at the end of the day, we may be sim racers, but we still go for that gap when it's there.
And we saw that on multiple occasions. And finally, what was the idea behind the car change? Were you not comfortable in the Porsche, so you went for the Ford, or was it just something it was sort of like idea at the moment, going, oh yeah, well I fancy going in the Ford? What was the thinking behind that?
Well, obviously, as I said, when we finished at Sebring, I pretty much did all my practice in the Fords, and I started practicing in the Porsche by myself, not in the official sessions, just my own test sessions. And I didn't feel comfortable. I did about 100 laps and just couldn't quite hook up consistent lap after lap. I was making mistakes, locking brakes, and I went back to the Fords, and within 5 laps, I was faster on average every single lap. So it was just a case of, it's a sensible thing, we'll go back to the Ford.
Well, it definitely works for you because you came away with the win in the bronze class and 4th overall, so a great job all round. While we've got you in the box, is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out?
Yeah, as usual, guys. Obviously, Rob Pearson, Luxem24, Paul Gordon, some stickers. Obviously, well known in the F3 side of things. Draper Tools sponsors SRW for putting on a great series, and then you guys broadcasting it and giving us something really good to watch back afterwards.
Brilliant. I hope we entertained everybody in the chat, and we hope you enjoy the stream as well. But thank you very much for joining us in the box, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at Watkins Glen.
You there, Jack. Thank you very much.
That was Billy Fletcher, our eventual P4 finisher and P1, our winner in the bronze class. And Peter, who do you think we should drag in? We've got Taylor Lane or Ben Thanes, because it's your interview next. It's your turn to do it. Who do you think we should bring in?
Well, I think I was very, very lucky a couple of weeks ago to commentate with a guy called Richie Hearn, who raced in the Indy 500 and actually got on the podium in his debut at that. And he has a rule of saying podium only. So I'm gonna use the Richie Hearn rule for once, and I'm gonna choose Ben Thanes.
Rob.
Sorry, Ben, we brought you in this conversation.
You're live on Simracersworld TV.
Nice.
A brilliant drive to second place today. Tell us all about your race.
The start went very well. I could move up fairly fast to P2 and then to P1 after the slowdown for Rob. But after that, Rob's pace was really, really brilliant. I couldn't keep up with him in the first stint. It was only afterwards I was able to match the pace. I could keep the gap at 3 to 4 seconds, but I didn't have the pace to close him in. So yeah, I had a really good time. I'm very happy to be able to follow Rob, as he's clearly very fast. Yeah, and overall very happy that I'm trying to learn the GTE, and it's going fairly well. So I'm very happy.
Today we saw the BMW M8 lock out the podium, and clearly it was the car to have here today at Monza. Is it a car that's just a good all-rounder, or we all know that the BMW is a bit of a dragster in a straight line? Tell us about it from the driver's seat. What makes that car so optimal right now?
Yeah, well, it has a really natural feel to it. Yeah, the car does what you want it to do. So I'm very. It's also the only GTE car I have at the moment, so I don't have experience with the other ones. But yeah, I really like the BMW. It has a really good feeling to it. It handles the curves very well, and also a great top line straight line speed, which is very handy at Monza, of course.
It certainly is, and I'm sure it will be very handy next time out at Watkins Glen. Now, before we let you go and off to go and enjoy your 1-2 finish with your teammate, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to while you're live here on the broadcast on Simracersworld TV?
Yeah, well, obviously the guys at SRW and SRW TV and the broadcast. There's all the stuff here is truly amazing. The organizing is very top notch. Also the penalty system, which has been revised, I think it is a very good step for SRW. And besides that, the guys at G Drive, they helped me mastering all these tracks and this GTE car. It's the first time I'm driving GTE, so it was quite a handful to learn. But these guys, they're helping me out a lot.
Well, congratulations, and hopefully we'll speak to you again up here in the commentary box very soon.
Thank you. I hope the same. Goodbye.
That was very tough. I didn't think I was going to make it at the end. The last lap, I had to put it into mix 11 to make it to the end, and I had 0.5 of a litre at the line. So it was very close. But yeah, I just kept it clean. It was a fairly straightforward race. It was really difficult to overtake, so found myself in no man's land quite a lot for most of it. But other than that, it was fairly straightforward. I believe it was exactly the same reason to gain back the 10 incident points off of our license, because I gained 10 in the first round. So I thought I might as well just miss quali to reset that back to 0, and I'm glad I did, because I managed to rack up another 12, I think it was, in that race. So it's not far off the 60 limit, I think it is. So yeah, I think I'll be doing that a little bit more this season just to get through. P28, I believe it was. It's a tough one, because I've never really been a very good qualifying driver. All my pace tends to be in the race because although I'm not quick, I'm very consistent with my lap times, well, fairly consistent, and that's how I can gain these positions. Because if someone makes a mistake or they crash, then that's just racking up the positions, and that's just how I car through the field. Written it down this time. So, Opencast, SimPower TV, Porsche Sports, 50 Forward, Ollie Slade for running such a great team there. Everyone at SRW for putting on yet another great series. It runs really well alongside the F3 series. I love both of them. So, yeah, thank you to you guys. Thank you.
Well, BMW domination, but I think more so G-Drive domination in particular. They got a lot of pace out there. Rob Tyson putting in another spectacular drive, and it's hard to express just how difficult it is to lead a 90-minute race like that from the front, from start to finish. That might sound easy, but it really isn't, to keep your concentration and not make those mistakes. So I think that's something that clearly Rob's got up his sleeve. So interesting to see. Of course, we're 2 rounds in of the season, so we've got plenty of other places to go. And I have to say, Watkins Glen is a track I'm really looking forward to up next. It's got a great history with sports car racing. The 6 Hours of the Glen is a real jewel in the crown of the global sports car racing calendar. So I think we're going to be in for a treat there. And as I said, hopefully we're going to see a good balance of manufacturers up there fighting at the front. But it's going to take a lot of practice, and it's going to take a really good performance to topple Rob Tyson from his crown. I have to say, and looking forward to 2 weeks' time, and also not to forget, if you enjoyed the racing today in the Simracersworld GT Evo series, to tune in at 1:30 p.m. UK time on Sunday afternoon for the penultimate round of the Porsche Club of Great Britain Sim Racing Series, as we look to see if Ryan Parkins can become the inaugural champion. I have to say, I'm looking forward to that immensely, and it's going to be at Spa, which, well, for many is the racetrack anywhere on the planet.
To have you along for it. But thank you very much for joining us this evening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you very, very soon.
We would never sleep. So let's forget about tomorrow and live for tonight while we're free. Touch the sky.